Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Board of Supervisors meeting of July 16, 2015. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Supervisor Avalos. Avalos present. President Breed.
Here.
Breed present. Supervisor Campos.
Present.
Campos present. Supervisor Christensen.
Present.
Christensen present. Supervisor Cohen.
Present.
Cohen present. Supervisor Farrell. Farrell present. Supervisor Kim.
Here.
Kim present. Supervisor Marr.
Here.
Marr present. Supervisor Tang.
Present.
Tang present. Supervisor Wiener.
Present.
Wiener present. Supervisor Yee.
Here.
Yee present. Madam President, all members are present.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, can you please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United
States of America
and to the republic for which it
stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, are there any communications?
I have no communications today, Madam President.
Colleagues, are there any changes to the board meeting minutes for May 5th? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve those minutes? Motioned by Supervisor Campos, seconded by Supervisor Marr. Colleagues, can we take that without objection once the public comment has been completed? Madam Clerk, will you please read the consent agenda?
Items 1 through 9 comprise the consent calendar. These items are considered routine. If a member objects, an item may be removed and considered separately.
Okay, can you call the roll, please?
On items 1 through 9, Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Wiener. Wiener, aye. Supervisor Yee. Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos.
Aye.
Avalos, aye. Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos.
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Christensen.
Aye.
Christensen, aye. Supervisor Cohen.
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell.
Aye.
Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim.
Aye.
Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr.
Aye.
Marr, aye. There are 11 ayes.
Those ordinances are finally passed unanimously. Madam Clerk, can you call item 8? Oh, I'm sorry. Can you call item 10?
Item 10 is an ordinance to approve a minor amendment to the redevelopment plan for the Transbay project area to provide bulk limits for general office buildings in Zone 1 and to make the appropriate findings under the California Environmental Quality Act.
Colleagues, can we take this item? Same house, same call. Without objection, this ordinance is finally passed unanimously. Item 11.
Item 11 is an ordinance to amend the Administrative Code to revise Chapter 6.
Supervisor Wiener.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Madam President. And colleagues, thank you for adopting a few continuances to this item while some of the building trades and the Department of Public Works could discuss various issues. The trades came to me several weeks ago when this first appeared before us and said that they wanted to work some things out with DPW. They've spent quite a bit of time, many hours, working with the department, and the two have agreed on some amendments, which we've distributed to you, which are not substantive as I understand it, and so I'd like to move that we adopt those amendments. I also have a question for the Department of Public Works. And specifically, and this is one of the items that came up in discussion, can the department clarify its intent to provide notice for quote-unquote contract service orders in a similar manner as they are currently doing for task orders and job orders?
Good afternoon, Supervisors. Edgar Lopez with Public Works. Supervisor, we would be happy to provide equal notification as suggested by the building trades.
Okay, so the answer is yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. So with that, Madam President, I move that we adopt the amendments that we've distributed.
Okay, Supervisor Wiener has moved that we adopt the amendments that have been distributed before you today. Is there a second? Seconded by Supervisor Kim. Can we take those amendments without objection? Without objection, those amendments pass. Supervisor Campos.
Thank you, Madam President. Just through the chair, a question for Supervisor Wiener and also for the Department of Public Works. Maybe the representative can come up. I am in receipt of a letter from Robert Muscat from Local 21 where they raised concerns about this item. And to the extent that we took time to address concerns that were raised by some of our other labor partners, I'm wondering what has happened with respect to Local 21.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nicholas King with the Department of Public Works. And what we spent a lot of time doing over the last year is cleaning up the legislation. It's pretty dense and pretty complicated. But the processes that I think would be most important to this body and to the public in terms of commission approval and oversight remain in place. So the letter that you're referencing, it's difficult to address all of the concerns point by point because they didn't articulate actual flaws in the legislation. They're kind of about other things, and they talk about the design-build process, which is a method of project delivery. So the bottom line is that this legislation does not touch commission authority to approve contracts. And I'll stop there unless you have a more specific question.
I guess, just through the chair, have you had conversations for Local 21? Have you met with them, and whether it's before or subsequent to this letter?
I mean, we had an opportunity to talk with a representative from Local 21, their attorney, on Thursday afternoon for about 4 hours, and we went through this legislation line by line by line, and he was there and he asked very specific questions. This legislation is co-sponsored by the 6 Chapter 6 departments. Many of the representatives from each department are here in case anyone has any questions. And we made those representatives available to all of the labor representatives that you mentioned, including Local 21 on Thursday, and went through everything line by line. And he raised questions, and we answered them to the best of our ability.
Okay, thank you. Well, I would ask that we, for the same reason that I think it was a good idea to continue the item for a week, to have an opportunity to chat with some of our other labor partners. I would like to have that opportunity so that we can have a discussion for Local 21. I don't think that Mr. Muscat would, raise this issue unless he felt strongly about it. And, it may be that in the end it doesn't resolve it, but I'm hoping that an additional week might help. So I make a motion to continue this item for a week.
Okay, Supervisor Campos has made a motion to continue this item for a week. Is there a second? Seconded by Supervisor Marr. Supervisor Cohen.
Thank you. I have a quick question. Supervisor Campos, did Mr. Muscat reach out to all of our officers, or was it just you on an individual level?
I think there was a letter that
That was sent to all of us?
Yes.
Just raising concerns?
Yes.
So generally, usually when labor have concerns, they, it's full court press. They walk the halls. I don't think anyone outside of the letter has raised any concerns. Supervisor Weiner, you want to jump in?
Supervisor Weiner.
Thank you, Madam President. So the trades first raise issues, and I think there are a lot of, from what I can tell, some overlapping issues, but maybe not totally overlapping between the different unions. And we asked DPW to work with labor and to meet with labor, and I know that they've done so and spent many hours doing that. We did, I received an email from Mr. Muscat with this letter. I think it was probably sent to all of us on Friday afternoon. Right. I left him a voicemail. I think he's on vacation, which is why he hasn't responded, but there was another Local 21 representative who was walking the halls yesterday, physically delivering the letter. So Local 21 has, I think, definitely disseminated its letter to the board, although it was later in the process than the trades did. I can't speak to their specific concerns. Even with the trades, I'm not the author of this legislation, so what I just asked the department to do was to sit down with labor to try to work through as many of the issues as possible, which I believe that DPW has done for many hours. But I can't speak specifically to the Local 21 concerns because they were raised in the last couple days.
So just to go back to, Madam Chair, if I may, Madam President,
Yes.
through you to Supervisor Campos, you're asking for a 1-week continuance. Is this on behalf of Bob Muscat, or what is the purpose, or what are we going to accomplish? To push it back one more week?
Sure, if I may, through...
Supervisor Campos.
Thank you, Madam President. Simply in response to the letter, out of courtesy to Mr. Muscat, I don't know that a week would necessarily address all of the concerns or be enough time to do that. I have a lot of respect for DPW. I know they do a lot of good work. But, to the extent that I want to address the concerns that were raised, but also move it quickly, I thought a week would give it, enough time to do that, but also not delay it so that if we do need action, we can all vote. But that's the thinking.
Thank you.
Supervisor Cohen, you had some other questions?
No, ma'am.
Okay, Supervisor Tang.
Thank you very much. I do have a letter here from Local 21, so I actually wanted to see, since we have department representatives here, if you can answer just some of the questions that are issues that they raised. Certainly, I want to respect the concerns they brought up, but I also know from my past life all the work that has gone into developing this legislation. So when they talk about how design-build contracts reduce competition for design and construction services by excluding smaller firms, as well as favoring large international and national engineering firms, I wanted to see if the department can speak to that.
Any volunteers? No, I'll let you go first.
So, good question, Supervisor. Design build is a project delivery that is allowed in Chapter 6 at the moment, and the way small firms get a chance to participate is that there's LBE requirements at the design phase, at the construction as well. So there's goals that are set aside that every contract has, and they have to meet those goals. Quite often, design build projects are fairly complex in nature, and they're large in their dollar value. So small firms are usually not able to take on the work due to its complexity and size. However, they do participate as either joint ventures or through the LBE participation in the design and the construction as well.
Okay. And so none of those set aside percentages or requirements are being changed?
That's not being changed. Also, how the contracts are awarded is not being changed.
Okay. One of the other issues they bring up is that departments will no longer need commission approval in terms of design-build contracts.
That's not accurate, Supervisor. That's not being changed. The the departments who have a commission will continue to approve those contracts.
Okay. So that one sounds like it's just maybe a misunderstanding of what the...
Yes. Let's...
Can you identify yourself when you speak after someone else again, please?
Nicholas King from the Department of Public Works. I just want to take a step back without getting too in the weeds here and say that the reason that this legislation is before you is to modernize Chapter 6. That's what we're trying to do, and that's what the departments have been working on for more than a year in response to changes to the legislation over the years that have kind of made the legislation a little bit weighty and unruly in response to different building technologies being invented that weren't around 10 or 20 or 30 years ago. Design build, construction manager, general contractor delivery processes were not standard ways of doing building contracting 20 years ago, but now they are. So this is really pretty boring, hopefully mundane stuff that we're talking about. And when we talk about design build, we're talking about a contracting method that is growing in terms of municipalities using it. About 40% of non-residential contracts, construction projects are design build, and 50% of projects over 10 million nationwide are done with the design-build method. If you take a step back and think about it, it makes a lot of sense that when we build the police crime lab, that when you're designing the lab itself, that you would check in with the people who are using the lab somehow to make sure that there's no errors in construction. So this is really about, in the big picture, delivering projects faster and less expensively and without delay, which is, I think, something that all of us care deeply about.
And so bottom line then is that despite that, the departments will still need the commission approval, though. It will not change that procose. That's
right.
What our
all of the planning
are.
processes before a project are the same, and they still have to get the approval for the contract after. Those are untouched.
Okay. And then just lastly, it says that the proposed legislation directly removes Board of Supervisors oversight of the use of sole source contracts in public works. Can you address that one as well?
Sure. I should also say on the previous point that there's still the Civil Service Commission, which is in place, and all of the notifications there. On an awful lot of our paperwork that Public Works uses, at least, there is union notification. So I know that PUC has pre-bid meetings, and we would love to see union representation there. So there's lots of places for labor who's concerned about notification to plug into this process. The way, moving on to sole source, so the way it is now for construction projects, if a Chapter 6 department wants to use a particular product or vendor, they have to have an ordinance go through the Board of Supervisors. So we are not asking to remove oversight for the sake of removing oversight. We're just trying to trade one process for another that's a little bit shorter and a little bit less expensive. So you've all voted on these things in the last couple of years, whether it's train control systems at MTA or different aspects of construction. I think we're not asking the people or you to trust department heads. This is a procedural set of requirements that are in place. So, number one, the places that sole source can be used are enumerated. It has to be when there's a specialized need, a particular technology or expertise, or something that's proprietary. This process is only available to the Chapter 6 construction departments. This is something that brings Chapter 6 in line with Chapter 21, which already has that authority existing. Right now, the Board of Supervisors requires annual reporting, and that would continue. There's a database that's kept of all of the sole source contracts of the departments, and if anybody is late, they get a stern letter from the clerk reminding them to send their sole source contracts in. You still have to do your homework and diligence and look for other sources. Is there another person out there who manufactures pneumatic tubes to install in a hospital? Maybe. But some of that stuff is proprietary or very highly technically specialized, so it saves the taxpayers money in the long run to have approval. And speaking of approval, there's still approval required by the department head and the commission. For Public Works, since there is not a commission, it would be through the mayor or the mayor's designee. And the department's need has to be in writing. So they have to say exactly what it is and document, is it proprietary, is it technical, what's the reason that this is happening. And at the GAO hearing a few weeks ago, they raised similar questions that you're raising and made sure that in a year we come back and have a hearing about this to report on how it's been implemented.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Supervisor Campos.
I won't belabor the point. I'll simply note that everything that you said sounds right, makes sense to me. The only point that I'm making is that just like, it was okay for us to wait a week to act on this, I don't see why it would be the end of the world if we waited one more week. So that was the only point. I understand what you're saying. The point is that I don't think that Bob Muscat would be raising these issues unless he thought that it was important. So that's the only point. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Wiener.
Thank you, Madam President. I just went back and reread again the letter from Mr. Muscat. And actually, this letter from Local 21 is not asking for a continuance to try to clarify something or make tweaks to the ordinance. It's asking us to reject the ordinance. The letter raises objections fundamentally to some basic aspects of the ordinance, including the design build aspect, and that's a totally legitimate opinion to have. But it's very different than when the trades approached me. It wasn't saying please vote this down. They were saying we have questions about the legislation, we want clarifications, and we may want some amendments. And they ultimately spent a few weeks meeting with the department and were able to get a bunch of questions answered. The assurance that we heard on the record today, as well as some amendments that were agreed upon and that we've now made. And so at no point has Local 21, to my knowledge, requested just more time to meet with the departments. They're requesting us to vote against the ordinance. I support the ordinance, and so I don't think a continuance is warranted here. And I think we should just vote on it. That's my take. If Local 21 were here saying we just need a week to have conversations with the department, I wouldn't have an issue with that. But that is not what this letter is asking for.
Thank you, Supervisor Weiner. Supervisor Cohen.
Thank you. I, too, had a chance to just reread the letter, and I agree with Supervisor Weiner's summation. I'm curious to know if there's a representative from Local 21 that's here. Okay, seeing that there's no representative here, I'm a little surprised. Usually when things are important, people send their representative. Thank you. That's it for me.
Thank you, Supervisor Cohen. Colleagues, we'll take a roll call vote on the motion to continue. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Supervisor Tang.
No.
Tang, no. Supervisor Weiner.
No.
Weiner, no. Supervisor Yee.
No.
Yee, no. Supervisor Avalos. Avalos, aye. Supervisor Breed.
No.
Breed, no. Supervisor Campos.
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Christensen.
No.
Christensen, no. Supervisor Cohen.
No.
Cohen, no. Supervisor Farrell. Farrell, no. Supervisor Kim. Kim, no. Supervisor Marr.
Aye.
Marr, aye. There are 3 ayes and 8 noes, with the noes being Supervisor Tang, Weiner, Yee, Breed, Christensen, Cohen, Farrell, and Kim.
Okay, the motion to continue fails. On the underlying item, can you please call the roll?
As amended, right? As amended?
As amended. Thank you, Supervisor Weiner. Can you please call the roll on the item as amended?
On item 10, as amended, Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Excuse me, on item 10.
11.
On item 11, my apologies. On item 11, as amended, Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Weiner.
Aye.
Weiner, aye. Supervisor Yee.
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos. Avalos, no. Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos.
No.
Campos, no. Supervisor Christensen.
Aye.
Christensen, aye. Supervisor Cohen.
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell. Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim.
Aye.
Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr.
No.
Marr, no. There are 8 ayes and 3 noes, with Supervisor Avalos, Campos, and Marr in the dissent.
This ordinance is passed on the first reading. Madam Clerk, can you please call item number 12?
Item 12, ordinance to amend the Campaign and Governmental Conduct Code to simplify and consolidate campaign finance disclaimer and disclosure requirements.
Can you please call the roll?
On item 12, Supervisor Tang.
I just wanted to, sorry, aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Weiner.
Aye.
Weiner, aye. Supervisor Yee.
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos. Avalos, aye. Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos.
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Christensen.
Aye.
Christensen, aye. Supervisor Cohen.
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell.
Aye.
Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim. Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr.
Aye.
Marr, aye. There are 11 ayes.
This item passes unanimously on the first reading. Madam Clerk, can we go to our 2:30 p.m. commendations?
Madam President, today we have 3 requests to introduce commendations: Supervisor Marr, Avalos, and Farrell.
Okay. Supervisor Marr, and for each commendation, you will have up to 5 minutes.
So, colleagues, I have 2 quick ones. The first, given we always honor the warriors and the giants as heroes, I would say that we have public health champions and heroes for our communities as well. I'd like to ask if Susanna Hennessy Lavery from the Department of Public Health could come forward. I believe she's a champion of our community's public health. She's a health educator with the San Francisco Department of Public Health, and on the occasion of her recent retirement, in the past few years, she's been an ally to community-based coalitions of young people and low-income communities, middle-income communities as well, advocating for healthy food and affordable food access, healthy eating and drinking. She's created policies with community-based groups and a number of our offices on regulating e-cigarettes, to limiting tobacco density with our tobacco permit reduction ordinance, which will cut smoking sales in half over 10 years in our city. Our healthy retail SF ordinance, which will transform corner stores into healthier places for our neighborhoods. She's done outstanding work with many communities. She's a visionary. Since '92, she's been leading in the Department of Public Health food system initiatives, including her role on the Department of Public Health as a healthy retail SF program leader with our Office of Economic and Workforce Development. She's helped to nurture the Southeast Food Access Working Group, the Food Guardians, food justice leaders in the Bayview, through the Tenderloins Healthy Corner Store, food justice leaders. Empowerment, I guess, could be her middle name in many ways, because she's helped to develop action research and model of community action that's really developed a lot of our laws and policies in our city, including not only local but also global partnerships and state-level efforts. She served on the Bay Area's Committee for Vision y Compromiso, which is a promotora-type project to help educate educators of our communities. She's here with former Belfast City Council member Bobby Lavery, who I worked with at New College years ago. Thank you, her husband Bobby Lavery, to other family members, also Department of Public Health leaders, Allie and Gary and Tracy, and community-based leaders like Jessica Estrada, Ryan Thayer, and many others from the Healthy Corner Store coalitions and our food justice leaders through the city. So colleagues, I call her our San Francisco MVP of community health, Susanna Hennessy Lavery. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I say thank you so much, and good afternoon, supervisors. And the thanks really goes to you, supervisor, and other folks in this room, and your amazing staff, Nick, Victor, and Peter, for really championing our collective work for health equity and social justice. And I just want to say that that collective work really is centered around our community advocates. So we have Jessica here and Ryan and many others from the Tenderloin Healthy Corner Store Coalition, the Food Guardians, all the groups that you named, Youth Leadership Institute. And they really drive that process. And I also want to acknowledge all of the staff from the Department of Public Health and other city departments that work on Healthy Retail SF and all the other projects, as well as our partners, such as the Arab American Grocers Association and Sudi Associates in the wholesale produce market. So this really is a collective, collaborative effort, and it's about transforming our communities for the well-being of all, and couldn't happen without you. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks, Susanna.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Running and talking, that's talented.
We also are honored to have somebody so respected by Washington High School's Eagle Pride, with tremendous respect, Coach Rob, kind of affectionately known by his students and the youth athletes from Washington citywide. I know as a head baseball coach for Washington High School, I think it's 20 out of 21 championship games for the Eagles, 6 championships. Coach Rob has led the Washington High School baseball team. He's retired after 21 seasons. He was born and raised in Chinatown. He's a graduate of Washington High and San Francisco State University. He's a member of the San Francisco Prep Hall of Fame after 4 years. Amazing batting averages, 404, 424, 386, 301 as a star on Washington's varsity team. He later played at Skyline and San Francisco State and joined Washington's coaching staff in the mid-90s. Coach Rob has led for 22 years as head coach of Washington High's team. His teams have played in the city championship, as I mentioned, 20 out of 21 years, a record of 401 wins, and they won 6 city championship titles and 2 regional Transbay championships as well. He coached 2 generations of young people into athletes and leaders. 20 of his players have gone on to play collegiately and 2 professionally. There's tremendous respect for him from the students, the parents, the communities of Washington High. He's also a police officer protecting our neighborhoods and communities, where he served for 20 years with the unwavering support of his wife, Debbie, and his 2 sons, Chris and Maddie. He's an amazing person. All the stories I hear from the parents and others have so much respect for Coach Rob. He's engaged with many of us and parents to advocate for renovation of the batting cage, a state-of-the-art batting cage for Washington High School for future generations of baseball players. Colleagues, please give a warm welcome to Coach Rob and thank him for his great work for the youth of San Francisco.
Thank you, Eric. It's a great honor. Thank you.
Thank you and congratulations. Supervisor Farrell, you have a commendation today.
Thank you, Madam President. So, colleagues, today I want to recognize an organization and call up one of the leaders of this organization for their great work here in San Francisco, and it's the Alzheimer's Association for all of their work to end the disease that now is affecting over 5 million Americans. And so Sylvia and Daria, there, right up front. Oh my gosh, what a nice purple sash. All right. So just a little bit, the number of people living with Alzheimer's is expected to grow to as many as 16 million later in this century. There are currently more than 588,000 people living with Alzheimer's in the state of California, over 12,000 here in San Francisco, and another 36,000 caregivers in San Francisco who are caring for a loved one with Alzheimer's. Researchers are making great progress on the disease, and the Alzheimer's Association is marking June as Alzheimer's and Brain Awareness Month to bring more mindfulness and awareness to the disease. If any of you have a personal experience with either a loved one or a friend that has a loved one with the disease, it is incredibly trying and debilitating for everybody. And Sylviane, I just want to, and for all the people that are here today representing the Alzheimer's Association, I want to thank you for all of your hard work. The fight's going to continue for a long time, but the City of San Francisco wanted to recognize you, so congratulations to you.
Thank you, Supervisor Farrell. Thank you very much. My name is Sylviane Durier. I'm a resident of San Francisco and a volunteer with the Alzheimer's Association of Northern California. We offer a wide array of services to San Franciscans, including support groups in English, Cantonese, and for our LGBT community. We plan to open an office soon in San Francisco, which will make our classes and resources even more accessible. On behalf of the Alzheimer's Association, I want to thank you for this certificate and share some basic facts about Alzheimer's disease. First of all, I'd like to say the reason that brings me to this room is a few years ago, my husband came down with early onset Alzheimer's, a development that profoundly changed our lives. He had to close his business, and I started learning caregiving skills, which I will continue to learn as the disease progresses along to keep him safe and happy. That said, he is one of only 47 million, or he is only one of 47 million people worldwide now living with Alzheimer's. In 15 years, they expect that number to climb to 76 million people worldwide. Some other basic facts about Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is a fatal neurological disease that kills nerve cells and tissue in the brain, affecting an individual's ability to remember, think, and plan. As the disease advances, the brain shrinks dramatically due to cell death. Individuals lose their ability to communicate, recognize family and friends, and care for themselves. Currently, there is no way to prevent, cure, or even slow Alzheimer's. Everyone is at risk. everyone with a brain. Alzheimer's is the most expensive disease in America. It will bankrupt our nation if we do not change course by finding effective treatment. During Alzheimer's and Brain Awareness Month, we are asking San Franciscans to take the Purple Pledge. Please use your brains to help fight Alzheimer's disease in 3 ways. First, please take the Purple Pledge at alz.org/pledge. And please share this via social media. Second, on June 21st, please participate in the Longest Day, a sunrise to sunset event to honor those facing Alzheimer's with strength, passion, and endurance. Go to alz.org/TLD to register today. And third, please join our San Francisco Walk to End Alzheimer's on Saturday, September 19th in Fort Mason. Thank you for your support.
Thank you and congratulations. Now I'd like to acknowledge Supervisor Avalos for our last commendation of today.
Thank you, President Breed. I'd like to call up Michael Freeman to the podium. And Mr. Freeman's coming up. I rise to recognize Michael Freeman, an operations supervisor with SF TV, who is retiring on Friday after 20 years. Michael has been professionally involved with local television stations since the early 1980s. He started as a video crew person and playback operator with Viacom Cablevision in San Francisco and Marin County. From there, he was the access coordinator for City Visions, San Francisco's public access channel operated by Viacom Cablevision, for 7 years. While at Viacom, he successfully advocated for the upgrade of the facility, streamlined operations, and improved community training and outreach. Through his work with the public access channel, he became familiar with the public's need and the many policy questions and conflicting priorities inherent in local cable programming. During the first Gulf War, he saw the public access played a crucial role in providing the public with information and perspectives disregarded by the mainstream media. At the end of 1993, he began working for the San Francisco Community Television Corporation, which had just started a contract to operate San Francisco's government channel. With this nonprofit, he took on the role of production supervisor and was involved in planning for management of public access in San Francisco. He helped develop plans for a new public access facility, participated in the search for a suitable location for the facility, helped write the plan for nonprofit management of the channel, and successfully advocated for nonprofit management of public access. The San Francisco Board of Supervisors recognized his work by appointing him to the Citizens Telecommunications Policy Committee. This committee made recommendations to the Board of Supervisors that resulted in significantly greater funding and support for local public educational and government channels. Michael continued to work for the public with SF TV, the San Francisco's government channel, as media production and later operations supervisor. He helped guide the growth of the channel, including the selection, purchase, and installation of equipment and facilities for field and studio production, editing, and government meeting coverage, including the ongoing conversion of the Station City Hall facility to a modern, high-definition digital facility. Michael's efforts in collaboration with other staff were instrumental in SF-Gov TV evolving from a tiny startup operating in a garage to one of the best local government channels in the country. He has produced, shot, directed, and edited dozens of programs for SF-Gov TV, including Distress SF, which provides San Francisco's neighborhoods Meet Your District Supervisor, or weekly legislative update series, and many election-related programs. Michael has also served as board member and board president for Berkeley Community Media, the nonprofit public education and government channel, and facility for Berkeley, California. It is clear that Michael has really dedicated his life to open government, to ensuring that the public has access to what is going on in our board chamber and other places where government decisions are made, and that is a crucial work for ensuring that the public is well informed and knows exactly what we are doing. So I really appreciate that work. Michael plays electric guitar and has led several local bands while producing several multimedia performances. He lives with his beautiful and accomplished common-law wife, Susan Kuchinskas. Sorry if I mispronounced her name. Kuchinskas, the noted novelist, and our proud pet guardians to Udupi and to Trip. Congratulations on your work and on your retirement. Consider it a long and prosperous summer vacation. Summer is just beginning. I hope you enjoy the most of it.
Thank you. Thank you, Supervisor and Supervisors. Television is always a team effort, and I'm happy to have a good chunk of our team here. Our station manager, Jack Chin, and Charles Kremenak, who's been with the station as long as I have. And we have Mark Bunch, Scott Weisman, and Jennifer Lowe here. Really appreciate the support from the board, and especially the clerk's office has been great working with us. They've been very professional. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and congratulations again on your retirement.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, can you please call item number 13?
Item 13 is an ordinance to amend the administrative code to require that all city elected officials keep public daily calendars of their meetings and events, and to require that calendars kept by elected officials and department heads include information about the identities of persons attending meetings or events.
Supervisor Avalos.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Colleagues, this ordinance will add the Board of Supervisors and other citywide elected officials to the public calendar requirement of the Sunshine Ordinance. This ordinance will also require elected officials to identify the people who attend their meetings, with some exceptions for situations where privacy, such as whistleblowers, is necessary to protect people who want to discuss confidential information with the city. In 1999, voters approved the Sunshine Ordinance, which requires the mayor, the city attorney, and department heads to make public a calendar listing their official meetings. For some reason, the Board of Supervisors and other elected officials were not included in the public calendar requirement. The civil grand jury, just last year, recommended that the board take this action so the public can know who we're meeting with. Last month, the board voted, or a couple months ago, the board voted against implementing this recommendation because supervisors already are willing to disclose our calendars, but we are not required to, and so we are free to ignore public requests for our calendars. The civil grand jury also argued that disclosing the attendees at our meetings is critical for tracking lobbyist activities. If the public doesn't know who we're meeting with, there is no way to verify that lobbyists are accurately reporting when they are meeting with elected officials. I understand that this ordinance in its implementation will create additional work for our staffs, but I think we can all adjust to the process of passing around a sign-in sheet at our meetings and then adding the names to our calendars. In fact, my office has already been involved in doing that work. It's a small price to pay for improving transparency and trust in our local government. Gallup polls conducted an annual poll that's asked Americans to rank their honesty and ethical standards of various professions. Lobbyists and members of Congress have always been at the bottom of the list. It's my hope that providing a little more transparency and accountability about who we meet with can help improve the public's trust in our government. And that's essentially what this ordinance is about, is really creating the transparency that helps to create that trust between local government, our offices, and the general public. Colleagues, I do have several amendments or amendment of the whole that I'd like to be able to introduce, and I want to thank Supervisor Wiener for working with me in my office to help make this legislation comprehensible and something that I think we can all understand and comply with. And I have Mr. Givner here to, if he could just briefly kind of summarize the amendments that we have here today.
Deputy City Attorney John Givner. Happy to summarize the amendments. One, just clarification on the existing law, the Sunshine Ordinance, which was adopted by the voters in the late 90s, required that the mayor, the city attorney, and all department heads keep public calendars of their meetings involving city business. Even though the city attorney was the only elected department head called out in that ordinance, our office has advised for the last 16 years that all department heads, including elected department heads, are subject to the calendar requirement. So that, say, includes the DA, the public defender, the assessor, et cetera. This ordinance would add the Board of Supervisors to that list. The Board of Supervisors was not required to keep a calendar under the Sunshine Ordinance. The amendment of the whole that Supervisor Avalos has distributed will do, I think, 4 or 5 things. Let me try to run through them. In committee, the Rules Committee made an amendment requiring calendar keepers, department heads, the mayor, and other elected officials, to collect information about the names of people who attend meetings. The amendment today will clarify that the requirement to name attendees at meetings applies only to meetings of 10 people or less. So if it's a meeting of 10 people or less, you must report the names of attendees, subject to certain exceptions, and you must make an attempt to get the names of those individuals who are attending the meeting and the organizations they represent. The second change in the amendment of the whole is to clarify that when counting up to 10 to figure out when you need to report the names of people attending your meetings, you should not count yourself. So the department head or elected official doesn't count in figuring out how many people are at the meeting for the purpose of the name requirement. Third clarification is that the department heads and elected officials will have 3 days after the meeting to update the calendar with the names of attendees and the organizations they represent. And then 2 additional pieces. The requirement to add names and the requirement that Board of Supervisors members keep a calendar at all will not apply to events where city business is discussed only incidentally. So say you're at an event and someone just comes up to you and asks you a question about a pending ordinance. You do not have to add that event to your calendar after the fact. It will not apply to casual, unplanned discussions with residents. So you run into someone on the street and have a discussion. That's not a meeting that has to be added to your calendar. And does not apply to campaign-related events, even if city business questions come up during those events. And finally, as long as officials make a good faith effort to comply with the name-keeping requirement, and as long as members of the Board of Supervisors make a good faith effort to comply with the calendar requirement generally, you will not be in violation of the ordinance. So those are the amendments that are proposed in the committee in the amendment of the whole.
Thank you very much. So, colleagues, would like to motion that we accept the amendment of the whole.
Okay, motion by Supervisor Avalos, seconded by Supervisor Campos. Colleagues, can we take those amendments without objection? Without objection, those amendments pass. Supervisor Farrell.
Thank you, President Breed. First of all, I want to start by saying thank you, Supervisor Avalos, for bringing this legislation forward. I know it's going to create more work, but I do believe in the transparency, and thanks Supervisor Wiener for working with him to have a comprehensive set of amendments. There's one thing I wanted to propose an amendment as well, and I can do this orally, that I think is still missing here. And I say this in particular as my purview as budget chair the last few years and continuing, as we seek to increase transparency here at the board. We do have at this time of the year a significant amount of organizations, for-profit or nonprofit, doesn't matter, that come around advocating for funds. And I think that having those organizations be listed as well in this or be required to be disclosed, I think would be very important, and those individuals as well. To me, it fits along with this transparency theme for sure. So what I would like to do is propose an amendment on page 2, section C, and it basically covers who needs to be disclosed. And it says right now, developers of major projects as defined in the Campaign and Governmental Conduct Code, section 3.510, if the major project is discussed at the meeting or event. And then the addition would be, and employees or representatives of any entity that has received a grant from or entered a contract with any city department within the previous 12 months. So that would be my proposed amendment.
Okay, Supervisor Farrell has made an amendment. Is there a second to that amendment? Seconded by Supervisor Tang. Colleagues, can we take the amendment? Okay, before we take the amendment, I would like to recognize Supervisor Cohen.
Thank you, Madam President. To the maker of the amendment, does this include labor organizations that have contract relationships with the city?
Yes, it would include them.
Thank you very much.
Okay. So, colleagues, can we take the amendment without Supervisor Wiener? Clarification on the amendment.
I'm sorry, could I just hear the language again, just because I only heard it the one time?
Okay, Supervisor Farrell.
Absolutely. So the addition would be specifically in a quote, and employees or representatives of any entity that has received a grant from or entered a contract with any city department within the previous 12 months.
And through the chair, so it's just employees?
Employees or representatives.
Representatives, okay. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Okay, Supervisor Cohen, you want clarification on the amendment?
No, but I would like to be recognized after the vote.
Okay. So, colleagues, any objection to the amendment? Can we take the amendment without objection? Without objection, the amendment passes. Okay, Supervisor Cohen.
Thank you very much. My question is really to the city attorney, who gave a description of good faith effort, and that's a very interesting term. And I was wondering if there's some kind of a framework of what qualifies or quantifies as a good faith effort. What does it look like? How will I know? How will you know, more importantly? And is there a standard of what a good faith effort looks like?
Deputy City Attorney John Givner. The term was left intentionally somewhat open because what is good faith always is going to depend on the facts. I anticipate that if this ordinance passes, my office will probably work with you all and any other department heads who want it to prepare a standard sign-in sheet, say, where if you have a meeting with 10 or fewer people, you can hand out a sign-in sheet. We'll have some language at the top that says, please sign in. You're not required to identify yourself unless you fit into one of these categories: lobbyist, campaign consultant, or with Supervisor Farrell's amendment, employee or representative of a city contractor or grantee. The idea behind the good faith efforts provision is that if you take steps in good faith to try to comply with the ordinance by, say, circulating that kind of sign-in sheet, you would not be in violation of the ordinance if you end up with an incomplete list of names.
All right, thank you. I would imagine at some point, some future body will probably come back and put some meat around the term good faith. I think certainly when we talk about local hire and we think about the local hire ordinance and subcontractors and contractors getting work, good faith effort was always called into question as to being ambiguous and vague, but I think it's a great first step, and I'm glad this measure passed. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Avalos.
Thank you. And if you're willing to do that now, we can perhaps consider amendments that could strengthen it. But to me, good faith is also like if you're purposely neglecting, then you're not practicing good faith. So good faith is really making that effort. And I look forward to seeing, what language or what framework the city attorney can provide us to make sure that we can actually, conduct good faith fairly effortlessly and becomes a routine part of our work. I've been actually, trying to record in my meetings as best I can who is in them. I go right into my calendar and do that during the meeting sometimes. And that to me is also helps me to kind of remember, my meetings as well. So I think it's a really worthwhile procedure to go through to make sure that we're providing that level of transparency for the public who is interested in what kind of work we're doing.
President Breed.
Thank you. Colleagues, I'm not necessarily a fan of this measure, and I wanted to make some amendments, primarily because of some of the challenges with implementing these sorts of requests. I've never had a problem with the sunshine requests that come to my office when an individual makes a request, more specifically asking the question who I met with, who was in the meeting, what was the subject matter, and things of that nature. I do think it's important that if members of the public are interested in knowing about a specific subject matter, or whether or not we met with a lobbyist, or whether or not we discussed a specific subject matter, that it's definitely appropriate for us to articulate that to the public at their request. The problem I have with providing my calendar are a couple of things. Number one, establishing a pattern of my whereabouts. We are not department heads with hundreds of staff people who are able to help us manage our daily calendars. We have 3 legislative aides to assist us in that task, and I know that when I was requested to provide my calendar, it took my staff several days to separate my public and private calendar, and I'm not necessarily the most organized person in terms of being able to look at 2 different calendars to figure out, what it is that I'm doing throughout the course of the day. And as a result of that, I would ask that my colleagues support an amendment to this ordinance, because I think that the technology may exist, but the technology doesn't exist in my office to actually provide, in good faith, a calendar, or to manage my calendar in such a way that I have the technology to make it an easy task for my staff. And so what I'm asking colleagues is that members of the board shall not be required to keep a calendar under this section unless the Department of Technology certifies that it has developed a system to assist members of the board to comply with the requirements of this section. The other concern that I mentioned is the whereabouts and establishing a pattern of my whereabouts. More specifically, I have had concerns about my personal safety, especially with notifying the public of my whereabouts, and I'm not comfortable necessarily with doing so. I don't see a reason that we would need to tell someone specifically where a meeting place is. So I do think it's appropriate that we articulate whether a meeting was in City Hall or outside of City Hall. I don't understand the purpose of why we need to be specific about where a meeting took place. And so the other amendment I wanted to include was that members of the Board of Supervisors shall not be required to record in their calendar the place of each exact meeting that took place. The fact is, it's my understanding that the goal of this is to notify members of the public that we're meeting with individuals about subject matter pertaining to business of the city and county of San Francisco. And I'm comfortable with doing that, but I want to make sure that the city does its part in providing us with the tools to do so, that it doesn't take up significant staff time, and then secondly, so that it doesn't impact our safety. So colleagues, I'd ask that you support me in those two amendments to this ordinance.
And so President Breed, is that a motion to adopt these two amendments?
Yes.
Okay, and may I just suggest, I think there's a typographical error on page 3, line 16. States certifies that it has developed system. I assume that is a system?
Yes.
Okay,
thank you,
so
Supervisor Winter.
we'll take the motion with the addition of that one word. President Breed has made a motion to amend. Is there a second to that motion to amend? Seeing no second, the motion fails. Supervisor Avalos.
Thank you, colleagues. I really appreciate your patience with this ordinance. This is something that I think is really crucial for us, actually, to be clear about how we serve our public, and I really appreciate your support. I also want to thank my co-sponsors, Supervisors Marr and Supervisor Campos, for supporting this ordinance as well, and hope you can support it. Thank you.
Supervisor Campos.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to thank Supervisor Avalos for bringing this item forward. I know that it can be challenging with all the requests that happen with our offices, and I know that given some of the length of the inquiries that come in, that can be challenging. But I do believe that it's really important for us to move in this direction. I think that the more transparency we have, the better. And, you know, with respect to the amendments from President Breed, the reason I would not support those amendments is because I think that what we have seen is that folks like the city attorney, the mayor, have been able to comply with the requirements that are in place without those amendments. And I think that we should be able to do so as well. I think that it is important for people to know where we are, what we do, and to the extent that, you know, there are concerns about safety, I think that there are things we can do to address those concerns, and that's something that should be taken very seriously. But again, I want to thank Supervisor Avalos for bringing this forward.
Thank you. Supervisor Wiener.
Thank you, Madam President. I'll be supporting this legislation. I want to thank Supervisor Avalos, not just for moving the legislation forward, but to being very collaborative with various members of this board in terms of making sure we have legislation that is very clear in terms of what is required so that we all are able to comply with the ordinance, because the last thing you want is to have an ordinance where people aren't sure how to comply with it. We've always produced our calendar upon request, and I think members of the public are entitled to know what we're up to in terms of the actual conduct of city business. I do want to say, even though President Breed's motion failed for lack of a second, I want to acknowledge the concerns, I think, underlying the amendments in terms of the safety and security of members of this Board of Supervisors. And I say that as someone who has been stalked in a bathroom and has a restraining order against someone. I say that as someone who has had my building, I live in a multi-unit building, protested 4 different times, including one time where the protesters tried to break into the building. And I say that as someone, I know I'm not the only member of this board, when we see some of the vitriol and completely not just unprofessional, but over-the-top behavior that's exhibited in this board chambers. We saw it a week or two ago. We've seen it in committee. We saw it a few years ago in the hearing regarding the sheriff. And there are times when I think that I don't think that our city government necessarily does enough in terms of the security of members of this Board of Supervisors. Being a public official, we do open ourselves up to criticism and aggressive criticism, and that's appropriate and warranted. I don't think any of us has a problem being aggressively criticized. But I do think that the concerns that President Breed raises are legitimate concerns. And so I just wanted to make those comments. But I do think that this is important legislation, and I'll be voting for it.
Thank you. Supervisor Farrell.
Thank you, President Breed. Just a little bit to echo Supervisor Wiener's comments. For the two amendments, I think the first one I had a little bit more issues with. I think the second one I would very much be open to discussing, seems to be at a later point at this time. Certainly, as Supervisor Wiener mentioned, he's had incidents with 3 children. I've had incidents as well, and if you do anything, you protect your kids, and that's not something that I take lightly at all, and we're continually vigilant on. So if there's things that we need to work on going forward on this, I'm more than happy to do that, and will absolutely lend my support to that from a voting perspective going forward.
Okay, seeing no other names on the roster, Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Just before we go to that, I'm sorry.
Supervisor Avalos.
Madam President, I would just want to reiterate my thanks to Deputy City Attorney John Givner for his work on this ordinance as well. He's really made it clear.
Thank you. Seeing no other names on the roster, Madam Clerk, can you call the roll?
On item 13 is twice amended. Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Wiener.
Aye.
Wiener, aye. Supervisor Yee.
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos.
Aye.
Avalos, aye. Supervisor Breed.
No.
Breed, no. Supervisor Campos.
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Christensen.
Aye.
Christensen, aye. Supervisor Cohen. Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell. Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim. Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr.
Aye.
Marr, aye. There are 10 ayes, 1 no, with Supervisor Breed in opposition.
This ordinance passes on the first reading. Madam Clerk, can you please call items number 14 through 17?
Items 14 through 17 are the interim proposed budgets and the appropriation ordinance. Item 15 is the interim annual salary ordinance enumerating positions, continuing creating or establishing full-time or temporary positions in the annual budget and appropriation ordinance, and specifying and fixing the compensations and work schedules for the fiscal years ending June 30th, 2016, June 30th, 2017. Item 16 is the resolution to approve the interim budget of the Treasure Island Development Authority for fiscal years 15-16 and 16-17. And item 17 is the resolution to approve the interim budget of the Office of Community Investment and Infrastructure, operating as the successor agency to the San Francisco Redevelopment Agency for fiscal years 2015 through 16.
Supervisor Farrell.
Thank you, President Breed. Colleagues, these are simple items that we visit every single year at this time as we continue to contemplate our budget that allows us to continue to fund our government operations at the beginning of the new fiscal year, starting July 1st until we pass out our budget and the mayor signs it. So hope to have everyone's support.
Okay, Madam Clerk, can you call the roll?
On items 14 through 17, Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Wiener.
Aye.
Wiener, aye. Supervisor Yee.
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos.
Aye.
Avalos, aye. Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos.
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Christensen.
Aye.
Christensen, aye. Supervisor Cohen.
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell.
Aye.
Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim. Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr.
Aye.
Marr, aye. There are 11 ayes.
Okay, these items pass unanimously. Madam Clerk, can you call the next item, please?
Item 18 is an ordinance to amend the administrative code to extend the film rebate program expiration date to June 30th, 2019, and correspondingly increase the authorized funding cap for the film rebate project account to $4 million, subject to annual appropriation.
Same house, same call?
Nope.
Oh, Supervisor Farrell.
Thank you, President Breed. Just want to speak for a few minutes, have a few comments on this item. So, colleagues, we currently have a film rebate program in place known as Scene in San Francisco that we've amended and updated a number of times over the past few years since I've been in office. We've seen the program grow, prove successful, and incentivize more and more film production here in our city. The program, and the reason we have this legislation in front of us today, is set to sunset at the end of this June, so it's imperative that we continue this program. The legislation in front of us that I authored to extend the program is for an additional 4 years and raises the amount the Film Commission is able to offer to qualified productions by $1 million. This rebate program is showcasing our city on the big screen, providing longer-term employment for crews and actors in our artist community, and boosting our local economy while attracting additional tourism. It continues to be a win-win program. For every dollar rebated to the film productions who come to film in our city, approximately $6 are spent here locally on wages and other expenditures. What's even more encouraging is that early data shows, and the Film Commission expects the return on investment from the rebate program to grow over time, which means more benefits for local crews, actors, and our local economy. I do believe that extending the successful rebate program is a no-brainer, and know the success of the program will continue to grow year after year and continue to showcase our world-class city for the world to see. I just want to mention a few of the programs that have been recently filmed here that have taken advantage of this program. HBO's Looking series, seasons 1 and 2, and season 2 is currently airing on HBO. MTV's Real World, season 29 came back after a 27-year hiatus. Netflix's web series Sense8, and then Caviar Content's Diary of a Teenage Girl also was filmed here, which debuted at Sundance this year. The program has been a real success. It's a benefit for our local economy, our artist community, and I specifically want to thank Susanna Robbins, our Executive Director of our Film Commission, for her terrific work on this issue, for everyone in the Film Department, our Film Commission that has worked tirelessly on this program, as well as Jess Montahano from my office for helping with this item.
Thank you. Colleagues, can we take this item, same house, same call? Without objection, the ordinance does pass unanimously on the first reading. Item 19, please.
Item 19 is an ordinance to amend the Business and Tax Regulations Code to require the amount of real property transfer tax paid to be shown on the face of a recorded document and to conform the declaration of tax owed to existing law.
Same house, same call. Without objection, this ordinance is passed unanimously on the first reading. Item 20, please.
Item 20, resolution to authorize the Recreation and Park Department to accept and expend a grant of up to approximately $1.8 million from the San Francisco Parks Alliance on behalf of the South Park Improvement Association for the design and construction of the renovation of South Park for a 3-year term.
Same house, same call. Without objection, this resolution is passed unanimously on the first reading. Passed unanimously. Item 21.
Item 21, resolution to authorize the Office of the Controller to enter into 2 contracts. The first with Oracle America for a 1-year term with 9 options to extend for up to 1 year each in an amount not to exceed $27.8 million. The second contract is for a professional services agreement with Accenture for a 2-year term with 1 option to extend for up to 1 year in an amount not to exceed $23 million to implement and configure the replacement for the obsolete financial accounting and management information system.
Supervisor Kim.
Thank you. Colleagues, I want to express some of my reservations about the contract that is before us today. First of all, I do want to thank the Controller and his office for their thorough exploration of a completely new and revamped financial system with a software license, maintenance, and professional services contract. I was able to sit down with our Controller today, and I am convinced that the decision was rational and safe. My reservations, however, are the following. The system that we are voting today will likely be our system for another 25 years, similar to the famous system that we have right now. Given our extensive investment into the system, how difficult it is to transition to a different system, and in general, how slow government is in moving nimbly in this quickly evolving technology environment where any app that I am now using is simply out of date because I'm using it. The system that we are selecting today, Oracle, will look just as scary and outdated, if not more, given how much more quickly we are now moving over the next 25 years than the images that the Controller's Office displayed for the Budget Committee last week of our current system, which looks like it's a shot taken from the 1980s with the black screen and the green font. I'm just not prepared to make this 25-year commitment today to a cumbersome and bulky system that I will know will be restrictive and inadequate in only a few years. We are investing a tremendous amount of dollars, resources, and staff training into a software system whose cost will, we already know, balloon in years 9 and 10 as we try to maintain a system that will certainly be outdated. This, in fact, is part of Oracle's business plan, to get you when you just can't get out. And we already know, and it's been acknowledged, that this will be exponentially more expensive in 25 years. I know that a third piece that I want to bring up as a concern is that I know that the Controller's Office engaged in an extensive conversation about whether they should host the system on our servers or on the cloud, given the decreased cost of maintenance if we went with the cloud version, but ultimately went with hosting on our servers for now because this is predictably safe. I'm not disagreeing with this assessment, but I'm worried that we are continuing to fall behind the private sector in our thinking regarding technology, and this will only further burden our public dollars. $58.5 million is not a small amount of our budget, and more than anything with today, I really want to push the city and COIT to explore real open source alternatives which are free and in many cases just as secure as licensed software. We should examine how much money we spent on licensed software that could be effectively provided by free open source software. It may be that the first systems that we explore for this alternative is not our financial system, but it could be our email system. All of my emails are sunshineable anyway, so I'm not worried about security there. Microsoft Outlook, there are equivalents to Word and Excel that are free and open source, and that could save a significant amount of dollars and help wean us off our dependence off of some of the giant juggernaut companies that are out there. Government, I know from talking to many of my friends, and technology and investment is increasingly looked as the profit targets for licensed software companies due to unfounded assertions that often come in these large bureaucracies that licensed software is safer and more secure. There was a recent business article that came out last week in Bloomberg talking about how private sector companies are also moving away from pricey products, specifically Oracle and IBM, and replacing them with open source software, which is freely available and can be modified to their needs. Companies are even converting all of its operations to free database software. Oracle sales actually are declining for licensed software for 7 straight quarters to June, demonstrating that the private sector is moving away from pricey and cumbersome products. Companies like Apple, Netflix, Pinterest are moving in this direction. I know in order for the city to do the same, we would really have to rethink how we do this. We would have to hire internal engineers either to help us modify open source or work with open source companies to help modify their software for us. And I understand that there aren't a lot of municipalities doing this, and if this was done, San Francisco would be the first. But San Francisco, being at the center of one of the most exciting and dynamic regions for technology, should absolutely be the pioneer for this for government. Again, I do want to recognize the work the Controller's Office did. I understand that our financial system has a lot of different security issues, and while I'm not convinced there isn't an equivalent open source option that is just as secure and sophisticated in its capabilities to provide a suite of features as Oracle did, I just want to push the city to really explore these alternatives with software that is perhaps more low risk, or maybe to break up our systems and look at maybe in accounting we would go with open source, but with financial reporting we wouldn't. I think that this will allow the city in the future to be more nimble and to help modify our system over the years and not be weighed down 25 years later with a system that looks just as scary as famous.
Thank you, Supervisor Kim. Supervisor Campos.
Thank you, Madam President, and I do want to thank Supervisor Kim for raising the issue about open source. If I may, I had a question first for our budget and legislative analysts, if I may, through the chair, and then for our Controller's Office. Mr. Rose, thank you very much for the report on this item, and I just want to make sure that I understand what's being done here. As I understand it, there was a competitive bid, a competitive process that was followed, and I want to make sure that I get this straight, that the final contract was actually a lot larger than the request for proposal that went out. I just wanted to see if you could confirm that and what the numbers were.
Madam
Mr.
President,
Rose, yes.
Harvey Rose, Budget Analyst for the Board of Supervisors. Supervisor Campos, that is correct. Supervisor Campos, the competitive bid, there were 3 bids, and the Controller selected the Oracle Accenture bid, which was approximately $26.9 million. Subsequent to the acceptance of that bid, there were negotiations between the Controller and the contractors, which raised the bid to $50.9 million. So the difference between the $50.9 million and the which is a 61.6% increase, and the $26.9 million was not competitively bid. It was determined that it would be to the advantage of the Controller and the city to negotiate that increased amount, and that was to provide for additional time, more software maintenance.
I mean, I guess what concerns me about that is that the whole point of a competitive process is that you set out a set of services that you want provided with the idea that you're going to get a specific proposal in response to that request. But when you increase the amount of services in the contract through negotiations, it could be that if you had done it differently, where the competitive process was broader in scope, that maybe it could have led to a different outcome. I mean, isn't that sort of how this works?
President Breed, members of the board, Supervisor Campos, we did call that out. We had concerns about it, but we finally concluded, and let me just quote what we stated in our report. We recommend that you approve, to the Board of Supervisors, we recommend that you approve the proposed resolution while the Accenture Oracle competitive bid cost of $26,987,556 was $10,289,328, or 61.6% more than the second place bidder, and the total cost for both contracts was subsequently negotiated up without a competitive process to include additional software and technical support for a total not to exceed cost of $50,868,93. The Controller's Office went through a competitive process for the initial contract amount of $26,987,556, and in their professional judgment, the proposed contracts represent the best option to replace the city's financial system. For that reason, we recommended, and we still recommend to the board, that you approve this legislation.
So now a question for the Controller, if I may, through the chair. So what about that issue? If the issue of the size of the ultimate contract, which was double what you started out with in response to the RFP, if you had started out with a broader scope that resembled what you ended up with in your contract, maybe you could have gotten a different outcome. Maybe somebody else could have given you a better deal. I mean, isn't that true, or at least a possibility?
Thank you for the question. Todd Reedstrom, Deputy Controller. As Mr. Rose stated, we went through a very diligent competitive process, and also we went through 2 years of development of what the needs and specifications were. To make the comparisons as apples to apples as we could, we asked all the proposers to include 5 years worth of licensing and support. So we did that. We negotiated because we were very happy to negotiate and receive 85% discounting on the licensing, and so we negotiated twice as long as what was requested in the proposal, because that benefited the city. And so to take advantage of an 85% discounting, to also take advantage of optional functionality which we knew would benefit the city, including the purchase at contract inception of the business intelligence and analytics reporting, we wanted to make that opportunity at that discounted price to do so. We also had, whichever system we were to use and which you were to award, all of them would have needed database licensing and support, because that is required for any system that is run. And so regardless of the system chosen, in order to benefit from the discounting that we negotiated, including that in this proposed contract before you, benefited the city significantly. So that's why you see that. That would have been the case, that system need, that database, regardless of any proposal, it would have been needed for all of them. And as was the contingency pricing that's included in here, being able to include contingency, which would have been needed under any proposal. So those are the key explanations of why it's larger, and a principal one is as well that we are going for twice as long on the maintenance and support at the discounted pricing.
Just a final question, and I want to make a comment. Did you ask any of the other vendors whether or not they would give you how they would what kind of deal they would give you on the expanded scope?
Those terms and conditions were included in their bid. We saw all their price discounting in their bid, And the one before you today was ranked highest through the proposal process.
No, I understand the bid, but in terms of, to the extent that you expanded the scope of the contract and negotiations, during those negotiations, did you check with any of the other vendors to see what kind of deal they could give you?
We did not go back. We negotiated in good faith with the highest ranking, most responsive proposer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. With all due respect to the controller, and I have a lot of respect for that office, I can't support that because I do think that while it's true that sometimes when you do a competitive bid, you end up with a higher amount of the contract, the size of the contract here is so significantly higher. It's more than double that, to me, it really sort of undermines the point of a competitive bid process, which is that you try to outline a scope and figure out, based on that scope, who is going to give you the best deal. But when you have a scope, get responses to that scope, and then you turn around and actually double the scope from what you started, then you're talking about potentially a different outcome if you had given those vendors an opportunity to compete for that increased scope. So that's the challenge that I have. So I understand the importance of this function, of this contract. I know that we need to act. I just have concerns about the process. And another thing is that I do think that Supervisor Kim has raised an important issue about open source. And given the length of this contract, are we tying our hands when there is a very real possibility that the reality in this industry could very well be different, not in 10, 20 years, but in 3, 4 years. So thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other names on the roster, Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
On item 21, Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Wiener.
Aye.
Wiener, aye. Supervisor Yee.
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos.
Aye.
Avalos, aye. Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos.
No.
Campos, no. Supervisor Christensen.
Aye.
Christensen, aye. Supervisor Cohen.
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell.
Aye.
Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim.
No.
Kim, no. Supervisor Marr.
Aye.
Marr, aye. There are 9 ayes, 2 noes, with Supervisors Campos and Kim in the dissent.
This resolution is adopted. Madam Clerk, can you call item 22?
Madam President, I've just had some advice from the city attorney. I had consulted with him earlier. I do have a family member who works for Accenture, but we determined that there's no financial relationship between the two of us, and that he's not involved in a department that would be impacted by this. But
I'm sorry, Supervisor Christensen, are you speaking to item 21?
To the contract, yes.
Okay, so we've taken a vote. So
I
if we wanted to,
I'd just gotten some advice. I had determined that it was not an issue, and so hadn't brought it up. But Mr. Givner has suggested that I just
wait,
mention
before
it.
you continue, so can we entertain a motion?
It's just a disclosure, just in case there's an issue, but I'm not changing my vote.
Okay, so
Madam
City
President.
Attorney John Givner, can you please clarify if we need to take this discussion before the vote is taken or after the vote is taken?
Deputy City Attorney John Givner, it's merely a requirement that Supervisor Christensen disclose on the record of the meeting that...
But it doesn't matter if it's before or after the vote?
Right.
Okay.
If the disclosure is appropriate, you don't have to rescind the vote.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk, can you please call the next item?
Item 22 is a resolution to approve the issuance and sale of revenue obligation bonds by the California Enterprise Development Authority in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $10 million to finance or refinance the acquisition, construction, improvement, or equipping of a K-8 educational facility, Live Oak, a learning center for children.
Roll call vote.
On item 22, Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Wiener. Wiener, aye. Supervisor Yee.
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos.
Aye.
Avalos, aye. Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos.
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Christensen.
Aye.
Christensen, aye. Supervisor Cohen.
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell.
Aye.
Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim. Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr?
Aye.
Marr, aye. There are 11 ayes.
The resolution is adopted unanimously. Item 23, please.
Item 23 is a resolution to retroactively authorize the Office of the District Attorney to accept and expend a $110,000 grant from the state to ensure human trafficking victims receive comprehensive victim services and to enhance the collaboration with the Mayor's Task Force on Anti-Human Trafficking through September 30th, 2015.
Same house, same call. Without objection, this resolution is adopted unanimously. Next item, please.
Item 24 is a resolution to authorize the Office of the Assessor Recorder to accept an in-kind gift valued at $20,000 from the San Francisco Association of Realtors to improve the accuracy of appraising and developing valuations for properties within the city.
Same house, same call. Without objection, this resolution is adopted unanimously. Next item, please.
Item 25 is a resolution to declare the intent of the city to reimburse certain expenditures from proceeds of future bonded indebtedness, to authorize the Director of the Mayor's Office of Housing and Community Development to submit an application and related documents to the California Debt Limit Allocation Committee to permit the issuance of residential mortgage revenue bonds in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $35 million for 222 Beale Street.
Same house, same call. Without objection, this resolution is adopted unanimously. Next item.
Item 26, resolution to retroactively authorize the Department of Public Health to accept and expend a $145,000 approximate grant from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention for a program entitled Health Impact Assessment for Improved Community Design, continuing to advance the practice to achieve health and equity in San Francisco through August 31st, 2015.
Same house, same call. Without objection, this resolution is adopted unanimously. Item 27, please.
Item 27, resolution to approve and authorize the conveyance of real property located at 474 Natoma Street from the Office of Community Investment and Infrastructure to the Mayor's Office of Housing and Community Development and making the appropriate findings.
Same house, same call. Without objection, this resolution is adopted unanimously. Okay, colleagues, we're going to skip over to our 3 p.m. special order. Madam Clerk, can you please call items 32 and 33?
Items 32 and 33 comprise the special order at 3 p.m. The Board of Supervisors will convene a committee of the whole pursuant to a motion approved on June 9th for a public hearing to consider objections to a report of assessment costs. The subject of item 33, a resolution approving a report of assessment costs for sidewalk and curb repairs through the Sidewalk Inspection and Repair Program ordered to be performed by the Director of Public Works, the costs to be paid for out of a revolving fund.
Colleagues, today's Committee of the Whole is being conducted to hear public testimony on a record of assessment costs submitted by the Director of Public Works for sidewalk and curb repairs through the Sidewalk Inspection and Repair Program, and to consider approving the underlying resolution. Let's open this up for our hearing. First, we will hear from the Department of Public Works.
Thank you. My name is Robert Kwan. I'm with the Department of Public Works. This report is for properties inspected and notified and repairs made and invoiced through the city under the Sidewalk Inspection and Repair Program from April 2014 through March 2015. During that period, the department inspected and repaired sidewalks and curbs along city blocks in portions of the Eureka Valley, Golden Gate Heights, Mission District, along Dolores Heights and Guerrero Streets, the Ingleside District, Sunnyside, Noe Valley, Buena Vista, and Outer Sunset neighborhoods, issuing 3,379 notices to repair and also 2,105 X1104s, notifications to agencies, at a cost of $1,462,042.75 for the notices to repair and $852,188 for the X1104s, for a total of $2,314,230.75. 1,971 invoices were sent out to property owners, of which 1,697 property owners paid, allowing the city to recover $1,213,150.75. The balance of the property owners elected to have the city to have the costs of the sidewalk repairs placed on their property tax or otherwise have not paid the city in a timely manner. In this report, we are submitting 257 properties with outstanding invoices totaling $235,320 to be placed as an assessment on the property tax rolls. As of today, 84 properties were removed from this list either through payment or while staff is working with the property owners to resolve outstanding issues. This concludes our report.
Thank you. Colleagues, are there any questions for the department? Seeing none, we will open this up to public comment. Commenters will have up to 2 minutes. Please line up to my left. First speaker, please.
Of struggle and strive for daily self-improvements, of holiness, and employ pathways of specialized usages of
Sir, this is not, excuse me, sir, you're out of order. This is not general public comment.
I'm not general.
Yes, this is not general public comment. This is public comment on the item before us regarding the sidewalk inspection and repair program. Next speaker, please.
Hi there, my name is Joshua Kramer, and I'm here on behalf of the owner of the property. We are just here to say that we didn't get adequate notice to make the repairs, and we did make some repairs that were clear to us, but there were apparently some other ones that needed to be made that weren't clear to us, so we didn't know quite what needed to be done. And we were willing to pay the balance, but we didn't get an invoice yet, so if there's a penalty for having it on the tax or anything like that, we would like to pay it now and get it settled.
Okay, so just to the public commenters, I just wanted you all to know that there will be an opportunity after this hearing is closed to meet with a representative from the Department of Public Works outside of the chamber to try and resolve any issues, any outstanding issues you may have.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
The Department of Public Works is flawed. We've never received any information.
Sir, can you move the microphone a little bit closer?
We've never received any information from that department. I have several properties in this county, and all the housing authority, we got letters. Health department, we got letters. This department never received anything. And many years our property is inspected every year by the housing authority. That's all I'm going to say.
Thank you. And again, sir, there will be an opportunity to discuss your issue with the Department of Public Works after the hearing. Next speaker, please.
Won't you fix those sidewalks solid, solid as a rock, where we all walk? And please don't stop, 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 stop. Fix it solid, solid as a rock, where we all walk. Please don't stop.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi there. My name is James Barron. I'm on the board of the supervisors for the condo association that's represented for 3256 16th Street. There is no evidence of any recent curb or sidewalk repairs at this location, and no description of the supposed work in this notice. The only areas that may have been repaired within the last 2 years is not this property, but an adjacent property, and we do not recall any issues of any repair being performed or completed in recent memory. In violation of the city's disclosure requirements, no specific proposed assessment amounts are disclosed in this notice. Any copy of the report for such repairs is attached, which contains the location, block, and lot numbers, and the total amount due, including administrative costs. This is not a valid notice. The notice appears to be fraudulent for other reasons as well. The file number is 150541. When the file numbers on the June 17th meeting on the subpublicworks.org, spdw.org calendar are in the 18000s. This is an actual notice from the SPDW. Then notice was clearly not timely and has denied us an opportunity to validate work is needed and reasonably our responsibility to make any needed work ourselves and to repair the completed work. No hearing is scheduled for SPDW calendar on June 17th, but apparently it does happen. So therefore, we deny that it ever existed. There was no repair done at this property. There was a repair done on the adjacent property, but there is no evidence of any repair being done on this property within the last 2 years. It's very clear. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. Bella Thury, 182 Liberty Street. My sidewalk was repaired at the time it was inspected. It was noted and indicated that it was as a result of the neighboring property owner's tree. I was told at that time that I would not be billed for this, but that the adjacent property owner would be billed. I don't know how to handle this, and I don't know how to take care of this problem in the future.
Thank you. Again, sir, there will be an opportunity to talk to a representative after the hearing, right outside the chamber, and just once the hearing has concluded.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hello, my name is Maria Villarwell on behalf of my mother at 526 Garfield Street. I'm not exactly sure what repairs were done because the sidewalk is still broken.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello, my name is Natalia Goldberg. Do I have to present my case to you, or can I just take it outside?
You can once the hearing. Yes, you can. If you choose to, you don't have to necessarily make public comment to talk to the representative from DPW once this hearing has been concluded.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm going to mention that I never agreed for the city to fix the sidewalk. I was going to hire the contractor, and I refuse to pay the charges.
Okay. Thank you. Yep. Next speaker.
Hello, my name is Armand Shahabi. I'm here representing the 9698 Cumberland Homeowners Association. Our condo is located at Cumberland and Dolores Street. If you know that location, there's quite a bit of sidewalk there. Over the years, we've received many requests to repair the sidewalks, and every single time we have done that, we have a clean record of always repairing these sidewalks. This past year, we received a bill for trimming our hedge and trimming a tree, both which were obscure and didn't make sense since we have a monthly gardener and we trim the trees on our sidewalk every 2 years. I tried to bring this up with DPW. They said, after I provided all evidence, they said everything makes sense. Nothing went anywhere after that, and we still received another bill. That was in September. That happened again a few weeks ago when we received another notice. So we don't know how to make recourse to this.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name is Brad Burke. I'm a resident at 609 Connecticut Street on Turner Hill, and we're a family of 4, and I just am objecting to paying for a sidewalk repair. It's an excessive cost, and I think it's driving families out of the city. And I'd also like to say that the sidewalk was repaired, it cracked, and they put a skim coat on it, and it's still cracked. And we didn't plant the trees there. They were planted by the Friends of the Urban Forest, and they're eucalyptus, and they're terrible trees, and we're forced to repair them, or to maintain them. And we just feel it's undue hardship. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
My name is Karen Salinger, property owner at 1229 to 1235 DeHaro Street. We contracted with the city to do repairs on our sidewalk. We're happy to pay this bill once the work is done to our satisfaction. We have ample documentation to show that we were in communication on a regular basis and the work was not completed. We'll wait and talk to DPW. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello, my name is Karma Keats from Dogpatch, specifically Minnesota Street, and I'd like to submit this into evidence. This is a picture of the sidewalk that was repaired, but the city was also expanding a water main, and I submit that would have to be, thank you, sir, that those sidewalk areas would have had to be repaired anyway. And the only reason I'm asking for reconsideration or a reduction of the bill is extreme financial hardship. Otherwise, I would pay it because I do appreciate what DPW does. But in all fairness, I believe that these sidewalk repairs were not incurred by us, were not created by us, and therefore perhaps the bill could be adjusted. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public? Sir, you've already been up, and I explained to you that it was not general public comment. So, thank you. Seeing no other members of the public who'd like to comment at this time, public comment is closed. Okay. Seeing no other speakers, this hearing has been held. It is now filed. Now, Mr. Kwan, do you have other members of DPW who will assist you with the members of the public and assist with their issues?
I have one other person, yes.
Okay, so we'll give you an opportunity to work those things out and then come back with your recommendations before we move forward.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, we will now reconvene as the Board of Supervisors and return to our regular business. Madam Clerk, can you call item 28 and 29?
Item 28 is a resolution to determine and declare that the public interest and necessity demand the construction, acquisition, improvement, rehabilitation, preservation, and repair of affordable housing improvements and related costs necessary or convenient to be financed through bonded indebtedness in an amount not to exceed $300 million, authorizing landlords to pass through 50% of the resulting property tax increase, and providing for the levy and collection of taxes to pay both principal and interest on such bonds, setting certain procedures and requirements for the election, and adopting the appropriate findings. Item 29 was referred without recommendation from the Budget and Finance Subcommittee. It's a resolution to determine and declare that the public interest and necessity demand the construction, acquisition, improvement, and rehabilitation and repair of affordable housing improvements, related costs necessary or convenient for the foregoing purposes, to be financed through bonded indebtedness in an amount not to exceed $350 million, authorizing the landlords to pass through 50% of the property tax increase under the Administrative Code, providing for the levy and collection of taxes to pay both principal and interest on such bonds, setting certain procedures and requirements for the election, and adopting findings under the California Environmental Quality Act. And Madam President, pursuant to Government Code Section 43607 and 8, both of these items will require 8 votes for approval.
Colleagues, can I entertain a motion to continue these items 1 week to the meeting of June 23rd, 2015? Moved by Supervisor Marr, seconded by Supervisor Cohen. Colleagues, did you want to speak before?
Yes, I would, very, very briefly, and I appreciate your making the motion to continue these items.
Supervisor Avalos.
So I just want to thank the mayor's office and the mayor for continuing to keep the door open for discussions on the affordable housing bond. I think it was great to see that there was movement up on the bond. It was something that I was hoping would happen, and certainly the controller's office was able to look at our bond schedule and the next issuance, which is probably going to happen, I believe, in the next couple of days, and interest rate was able to enable us to increase the size of the affordable housing bond that's before us today in terms of a resolution of necessity. So I really appreciate that. We're hoping to get to one bond that we can all agree on and get way past the 8-vote threshold, and look forward to discussing this further with the mayor. Thank you.
Okay, colleagues, there's been a motion to continue this meeting, these 2 items, to the meeting of June 23rd. Can we take this without objection? Without objection, these items are continued to the meeting of June 23rd, 2015. Madam Clerk, can you call the next item, please?
Item 30 is an ordinance to amend the Health Code, Article 12C, to require that new buildings of 250,000 square feet or more of gross floor area be constructed, operated, and maintained using available alternate water sources, that new buildings similarly of 40,000 square feet prepare water budget calculations, and that subdivision approvals requirements include compliance, and to amend the Public Works Code to provide that pipelines and other facilities constructed in accordance with Article 12C and located in the public rights of way are too subject to approval as minor encroachments and exempt from payment of public right-of-way occupancy assessment fees, and affirming the appropriate determination.
Supervisor Wiener.
Thank you, Madam President. Colleagues, today before us is first of its kind legislation to significantly increase water recycling in San Francisco, specifically by requiring water reuse in large new developments to require all new development of 40,000 square feet or more to engage in a water budget analysis, and to make it city policy within 5 years to only use recycled water for irrigation and cleaning of our parks and public spaces. I want to thank Supervisor Breed, Supervisor Avalos, Christensen, Cohen, and Kim for your co-sponsorship, and I also want to thank Jeff Cretin in my office for doing a huge amount of work to move this groundbreaking legislation forward. Water is a limited and precious resource. At a minimum, potable water should not be used for flushing toilets, irrigation, and other uses. California's water shortage is a severe public policy crisis. Some have called it an existential crisis, and it is not a temporary problem. According to some estimates, we may only have a year or two of stored water left if this drought continues unabated. Even when this drought eventually ends, we will still be vulnerable to the same water shortage issues in our growing state for decades to come. We need structural changes to how we use this precious resource. We must take aggressive policy actions now, no more waiting, to conserve water and to make the very best and most efficient use of the limited water we have. Last year, I held a hearing on the drought and what the city is doing around efforts to use non-potable water for public uses and what policies we could implement to improve water conservation and reuse in our city. At the hearing, we heard about the PUC's on-site water reuse program. Through this program, developers work with the PUC to voluntarily install systems to capture gray water from sinks and laundries, rainwater, and foundation water, and to use this water for non-potable uses. The legislation before us today will take this program a step further by mandating these systems in new developments of 250,000 square feet or more. Developers can choose to either install these systems within their building or join with other buildings nearby to create a so-called district where one reuse system can serve multiple buildings. Initially, the legislation only applied to buildings in the reclaimed water zone, the so-called purple pipe zone, as these developments were already required to install purple pipe for water recycling and have been required to do so for many years. But after conducting a significant amount of outreach, we expanded the legislation citywide. Regardless of the location of these new developments, we need to conserve water and make efficient use of the water we have, so it doesn't make sense to only apply this requirement in certain parts of the city. However, to recognize that certain developments in the pipeline outside of the reclaimed water zone have not been planning to install purple pipe, we've created a two-tier compliance system. Developments in the purple pipe zone that have not received building or site permit by November 1st of this year will be required to comply, and for developments outside of the purple pipe zone that receive their building or site permit after November 1st of 2016, they will be required to comply. The legislation will also require developments citywide of 40,000 square feet or more to go through an on-site water reuse analysis by the Public Utilities Commission to determine the feasibility of implementing such a system, and those developments will then be able to decide whether to do so. The savings from these systems are real. A mixed-use development can offset 100% of its non-potable demands through these systems. A residential development of 500,000 square feet can reduce its potable water use by 2 million gallons a year. In addition to these requirements for new private developments, the city needs to do more to increase its own non-potable water use. The legislation will make it city policy that when we're cleaning or irrigating our parks or our sidewalks or other public spaces within 5 years, water or recycled water will be required. And city departments will have to report back within 2 years on the feasibility and costs of implementing this policy. We conducted significant outreach in the development community to solicit feedback and to answer questions about the legislation. I want to thank the many, many developers and other professionals who engaged in the process, and I particularly want to thank the Housing Action Coalition and BOMA for helping us to bring as many developers as possible into the process. We've worked with these developers, answered questions, and addressed concerns to the extent we are able to do so. We also have been working with our Public Utilities Commission to try to lighten the burden on developments in terms of installing these systems. We have asked the PUC, and the legislation urges the PUC to reduce certain sewer fees, hookup fees, in recognition of the reduced impacts on the sewer system when a building has a recycled water system. The PUC is examining this issue, and I am cautiously optimistic that the agency will make the right decision here and reduce these fees. We also are working on follow-up legislation to waive certain impact fees for the square footage occupied by any water recycling system. And through this legislation, we convert any piping that goes under a street to connect buildings together to form a district. We convert that from a major encroachment to a minor encroachment in order to make it as easy as possible for these buildings to do so. We are also considering follow-up legislation to require within a certain number of years that existing buildings in the purple pipe zone find a recycled water use, probably by hooking up with another building in the district. Colleagues, this is important legislation. It's not the last piece of legislation we will see. We have a lot of work to do to address our water crisis here, not just in San Francisco, but in California. And this is a good first step. I want to thank the Sierra Club, the League of Conservation Voters, and Bay.org for supporting the legislation. And finally, colleagues, we have a minor cleanup amendment that I've distributed. And Madam President, I move to adopt that amendment, and I ask for your support.
Okay, Supervisor Wiener has made a motion to amend. Is there a second? Seconded by Supervisor Yee. Can we take the amendment without objection? Without objection, the amendment passes. Colleagues, can we take this item, same house, same hall, as amended? Okay. Without objection, this ordinance is passed as amended unanimously on the first reading. Madam Clerk, can you call the next item, please?
Item 31 is a resolution to designate Edgewood Center for Children and Families as an evaluation and treatment facility pursuant to the California Welfare and Institutions Code, Section 5151, for youth between the ages of 5 to 17, and authorizing the Director of Behavioral Health Services to enter into a designation agreement.
Same house, same call. Without objection, this resolution is adopted unanimously. All right, Madam Clerk, can we please go to roll call?
Committee reports.
Committee reports.
Items 34 through 38 were considered by the Government Audit and Oversight Committee at a special meeting on Thursday, June 11th, and were forwarded as committee reports. Items 34 through 37 specifically are being called together as they are the ordinances to adopt and or implement various Memorandum of Understanding or MOUs or amendments to existing MOUs with the following unions and for the following terms. For item 34, it's the ordinance for the Union of American Physicians and Dentists, Unit 17, effective July 1st, 2015 through June 30th, 2018. For item 35, it's for the Union of American Physicians and Dentists, Unit 18, effective July 1st, 2015 through June 30th, 2018. For item 36, it adopts and implements Amendment Number 1 to the 2014 through 17 MOU with the Laborers International Union, Local 261, implementing specified terms and conditions of employment for fiscal years 2015-16 through 16-17. And for item 17, it adopts and implements Amendment Number 5 to the 2007 through 2015 MOU between the City and the Services Employees International Union Local 10-1, H1 Fire Rescue Paramedics, extending the term of the MOU to June 30th, 2018, and implementing specified terms and conditions of employment for fiscal years 2015-16, 16-17, and 17-18. And the last item there is item 38, an ordinance to fix compensation for employees subject to the provisions of Charter Section A8.409 in job codes not represented by an employee organization to establish the working schedules, conditions, and methods of payment effective July 1st, 2015.
Colleagues, can we take these items, same house, same call? Without objection, these ordinances pass unanimously on first reading. Next item, please.
Item 39 was considered by the Land Use and Transportation Committee at a regular meeting on Monday, June 15th, and was forwarded as a committee report. It's an ordinance to amend the subdivision code to reauthorize an alternative to compliance with the below-market rate condominium conversion program for certain qualifying projects.
Same house, same call. Without objection, this ordinance passes unanimously on the first reading. Okay, can we go to roll call for introductions?
Supervisor Wiener, today you're first to introduce new business.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And colleagues, today I have a very sad in memoriam. They're all sad, but this one is definitely a tragic one for Vicki Rosen, who is the long-term, or was the long-term president of Upper Noe Neighbors, one of our neighborhood associations in District 8. She passed away on June 11th after a long battle with an illness, and we all miss her dearly. Vicki was born and educated in St. Louis, graduating with an English degree from the University of Missouri at St. Louis. By 1972, she was living on Fair Oaks Street, having made the cross-country move to give our great city of San Francisco a try. She landed a job at Rolling Stone magazine, handling the magazine's classified ads. She left Rolling Stone in 1975, but she continued to work as an editorial assistant at magazines, including New West, which was an offshoot of New York Magazine. In 1978, she moved to Valley Street to live with her now husband, Randy Zielinski, and his daughter, Erin. Vicki and Randy were married in 1983, and they remained on Valley Street through today, through Vicki's passing. Vicki's career later moved her to the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, and she also got involved in community work. Upon first attending an Upper Noe Neighbors meeting in March of 1998, she was soon asked to join the board, and in 2000 she became president of Upper Noe Neighbors. She held that title for 15 years until her passing. She was a talented professional and absolutely and utterly dedicated to her community and to her neighborhood. She's survived by her husband Randy, by her stepdaughter Erin, by her parents Sylvia and Sydney, her sister Jacqueline, and her many, many friends and neighbors whose lives she touched. And I just want to say, colleagues, as you know, I think as district supervisors, we have unique relationships with the presidents of neighborhood associations. We work with them on so many different issues. They are of incredible assistance to us as partners in trying to work out issues in neighborhoods. And Vicki was really just a terrific partner for me, and I know for Bevan Dufty when he was in office, and for Mark Leno when he held this seat. She is someone who was passionate about the neighborhood. She had very, very strong opinions. I was able to come and sit with her about a week before she passed. She was very, very, very frail and had a very weak voice. But she did make sure to express to me her views on a number of development issues in the neighborhood and the city, showing once again her passion and commitment. And so, Vicki, we will miss you. We know you're in a better place and smiling down on us. And colleagues, the rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Wiener. Supervisor Yee. Submit. Supervisor Avalos.
Submit.
Supervisor Breed.
Thank you. Colleagues, today I have two environmental measures to introduce. First, with Supervisors Avalos, Wiener, and Christensen, I'm introducing the Clean Energy Right to Know Act for the November ballot. This measure will create clear definitions that are in line with state law for what constitutes clean energy, clean electrical energy. When we shop for apples or grapes, we want to know what the term organic means and that it means something. That suppliers are in fact required to meet higher standards, not just slap a word on their product. Likewise, we should be confident that the word clean, green, renewable, and greenhouse gas-free means something. That they have a consistent statewide definition and can't just be slapped onto a product any way PG&E or its employees choose. Electrical production in San Francisco's single biggest source of greenhouse gas emissions. We're taking over 50,000 tons of CO2 emissions per year. After over a dozen years of PG&E standing in the way of cleaner energy, we are finally launching a clean power program in San Francisco. Consumers will finally have a choice about who provides their electricity, and in making that choice, they should be confident that words like clean and green are not just PG&E marketing terms. They will actually mean something. And consumers should know if their electricity comes from nuclear power plants. My measure will require the city to inform electrical ratepayers about how much nuclear power they are receiving. This way, when San Franciscans choose which energy providers to use, PG&E or Clean Power SF, they can make an informed choice, knowing that almost 1/4 of PG&E's power comes from nuclear plants. San Franciscans deserve to know what kind of energy they are receiving. They deserve to have a clean energy option where the term clean really means clean. They deserve to know about nuclear power, and San Franciscans deserve to make their own energy choices without corporations meddling in what decision they make. I have one other important environmental measure today. I'm introducing a resolution supporting California Senate Bill 350 by Senators De Leon and Leno. Senate Bill 350 sets very ambitious but achievable environmental goals for California to reach by 2030, namely generating 50% of our electricity from renewable resources, doubling the energy efficiency of our existing buildings, and reducing the petroleum used in motor vehicles by 50%. San Francisco already has the goal of achieving 100% renewable energy supply by 2030, which will be an amazing achievement. Moving in that direction statewide would be even more impactful, and it can be done. Renewable energy costs, even without subsidies, are approaching levels competitive with new natural gas plants. And the cost of solar power in California has fallen by more than half since 2009, making it increasingly competitive with fossil fuels. We can also increase our buildings' energy efficiency with targeted retrofits, smarter appliances, and better energy management. Doing so will reduce pollution and give us the same standard of living at lower operating costs, which frees up financial resources that can be invested elsewhere. On the motor vehicle side, on road vehicles currently producing about 1/3 of greenhouse gas emissions in California. But by reducing vehicle miles traveled, increasing fuel efficiency, and the use of electricity, biofuels, and other alternative fuels, we can make transportation cleaner in San Francisco and throughout California. Meeting these three goals will mean cleaner air, a better economy, and more protection for climate change. We're seeing these benefits already. There are over 55,000 solar workers in California, and solar jobs are growing 10 times faster than overall state job growth. And unlike fossil fuels, wind and solar energy requires essentially no water to operate, which is important during a drought like the one that we're in. Like AB 32 in 2006, SB 350 is potentially one of the most important pieces of environmental legislation this decade. San Francisco should be on record supporting it, and we can't achieve these goals. For the sake of our future, we must achieve these goals. And colleagues, I have two in memoriams today. The first in memoriam is being introduced by Supervisor Cohen and I for the late Mr. Leroy King, who sadly passed away in his home on Friday, June 12th. He is not only remembered as an advocate for workers' rights, a champion of civil rights and equality, supporter of cultural preservation, and a great San Francisco statesman, but also as an honorable, warm, honest man who worked tirelessly to improve the lives of everyone around him. Mr. King was born in Fresno on September 9, 1923, the youngest of Georgia and Eddie King's 6 children. In his youth, he attended a segregated high school with African Americans, Japanese, and Hispanic students. And at age 17, he moved to San Francisco to live with his sister Hazel, thus beginning his long residency in this city. During World War II, he was drafted into the U.S. Army's 101st Airborne Division. After his military service, he returned to San Francisco and attended City College and eventually joined ILWU in 1946. He met his wife Julia in 1950, but because of interracial marriage was not yet legal at the time, he didn't marry her until 1951. As an interracial couple in the 1950s, they were a target of discrimination, which included 9 evictions in their first year of marriage. The experiences Mr. King had during his formative years in the segregated schools of the 1930s and the military, as well as discrimination directed at his new family, no doubt inspired his dedication to civil rights and equality. During the 1960s, Mr. King rose through the ranks of ILUW, eventually becoming the regional director of Northern California, a position he held until his retirement in 1993. As an activist and ILUW organizer, he helped to create a lasting relationship between African American community and the labor movement. He was a key figure in influencing the ILWU's financial support for the St. Francis Square cooperative housing development located in the Western Addition community, which opened in 1963. He was the driving force behind Martin Luther King's 1967 visit to the city and was an enthusiastic supporter of Cesar Chavez. His drive to create a better San Francisco for all of its residents was unwavering. Well into his 80s, Mr. King was arrested during a demonstration in support of hotel workers. He was truly a passionate man. He was appointed as a redevelopment agency commissioner in 1980 and served for 40 years, the longest serving commissioner in our history here in San Francisco. And I had the privilege to be able to serve with him for 5 of those years. He guided redevelopment projects in many neighborhoods, including Yerba Buena, South of Market, the Fillmore, Hunters Point Shipyard, and Mission Bay. All of these projects continue to shape San Francisco today, and his leadership was instrumental in seeing these projects realized for San Franciscans to enjoy today. His passion and work for social justice brought Mr. King numerous awards, including the Human and Civil Rights Award in 2009 by the National Education Association. For all of Leroy King's public achievements, his family remained at the center of his life. He was preceded by his wife, Julia, who was the love of his life and passed away in 2000, 1 month before their 50th wedding anniversary. Last year, I was honored to join Mr. King and his family when we renamed the Yerba Buena Carousel at Yerba Buena Gardens to the Leroy King Carousel. We named this carousel after Mr. King not only because this was the carousel where he took his wife on their first date when it was at Playland, Playland at the beach, but because Mr. King was instrumental in preserving this carousel and bringing it to Yerba Buena and making sure that the next generation of young people were able to enjoy it just as much as he had. Mr. King is survived by his children, and one of them is joining us today in the audience. Rebecca is here with us today. Rebecca, can you raise your hand? Carolyn, his daughter, and Leroy Jr., his son, 5 grandchildren, Michael, Via, Joseph, Leah, and Leroy King III, 8 great-grandchildren who all are undoubtedly inspired by his dedication and his love for the people in the city and county of San Francisco. Mr. King was a true warrior, he was a great man, and he will be missed. The next in memoriam I have is for another San Francisco hero from the Western Addition, Mr. James Jerome Perry, who was born on April 3rd, 1917 in Texas. In 1939, the Perry family moved to San Francisco, where he enlisted in the military and served in World War II. After his service to the United States Army, Mr. Perry returned to San Francisco, where he met and married his wife of 65 years, Olivia Clark, until her death in 2009. Mr. Perry worked various jobs to support his family, eventually becoming the janitorial supervisor at UC Hospital and the Board of Education, where he actually retired. After his retirement, Mr. Perry helped his son and daughter-in-law develop and open the Two Jacks restaurant in the Lower Haight, where he became well known for making his delicious hoghead cheese and pork sausage. They also had a location on Leland Avenue. Both of these locations are an institution here in our city and well known throughout the Western Addition and the Visitation Valley communities. Mr. Perry enjoyed playing cards on Friday nights with his friends and enjoying Sunday dinners with his families. He leaves 5 children, Stephanie, Stephen, Margie, Denise, Maurice, 2 sisters, 5 grandchildren, and 15 great-grandchildren. And his granddaughter, Nikki, who I actually went to college with, is continuing the legacy. She is currently the owner of the Two Jacks restaurant in the Western Addition, and she continues to carry on her family legacy. Thank you, Mr. Perry. Thank you, Mr. King, for your service and commitment to the city and county of San Francisco. 2 amazing men leaving an amazing legacy. You were both loved and will be missed. The rest I submit.
Thank you, President Breed. Supervisor Campos.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. I have a couple of items. The first item is a follow-up to a piece of legislation that we voted upon recently, and that is my emergency legislation to do a pause on luxury housing in the Mission. That legislation dealt with not only a pause on luxury housing, but also with the issue of demolitions and conversions of PDR, production, distribution, repair space. Even though that measure did not pass 2 weeks ago, the issues that were brought forward through that measure remain very much issues in the Mission. And as the Mission community continues to plan, as that community works on solutions to address the housing crisis that is facing that community and the rest of the city, we need to continue to move forward to make sure that we have a better understanding of how we can address the issues underlying this crisis. And so with that in mind, for the purpose of better understanding the issues the Mission is facing, and so that we can better assess and plan, we need to obtain additional data. So I want to thank Joseph Smook from my office for helping me work on identifying the data needs that we need. that we have so that we can have a better understanding of what's happening in the mission right now. Therefore, I'm introducing a resolution today that requests the following of the San Francisco Planning Department. It specifically calls for 3 reports. 1, a report from planning on all market rate and affordable housing production in the mission, and comparing that creation of affordable market of market rate housing against the existing mission plan, mission area plan. We believe that having that information is really critical as we move forward. Second, a report on the loss of production, distribution, and repair space compared against the existing mission area plan. And 3, an analysis of the impact fees that have been accumulated for the mission area. I look forward to working with our planning department to have these reports completed and presented to the Board of Supervisors no later than October of this year. That is our hope. Our community has prioritized engagement of residents and businesses in the creation of a new plan for the mission. And the urgency of continuing displacement makes getting this data and this information even more critical. And again, I want to thank Joseph Smook of my office, and we'll look forward to working closely with our planning department to obtain that information. The last item is another in memoriam, and it seems that the last few days have been a very challenging time for our city in terms of the loss of some pretty incredible individuals, Mr. Perry, Mr. King, and others. And it is my turn to do an in memoriam for a pretty remarkable individual, and I know that I speak for many people, not only in the area of Bernal Heights, District 9, in the mission, but so many people who have been touched by this incredible individual that we just lost about a day ago. And that is my good friend, Karen Huggins. Yesterday was a pretty tough day. I got a call in the morning letting me know that Karen Huggins, who had not too long ago become ill, had just passed. Anyone who knew Karen Huggins can tell you that Karen was a really unique individual. I don't know that there are words to fully capture how incredible she was. She was one of a kind. In that sense, she was very much a San Francisco creation. Her passion, her intelligence, her commitment, her integrity were second to none. And anyone who has followed what's been happening to public housing in San Francisco over the last few years knows that the advances and achievements that Holly Courts as a community has been able to attain in the last few years have a lot to do with Karen Huggins. What she has single-handedly done for Holly Courts is beyond words. She was a tenacious advocate for that community. And on a very personal level, to me, Karen Huggins was one of the most remarkable human beings that I have come across. It really is hard to imagine the world, to imagine San Francisco without Karen Huggins. This city, this community will never be the same. I personally feel lucky and blessed that I got an opportunity to get to know Karen. And I know, as I look back at everything that Karen has done, that the best way to honor her memory is to rededicate ourselves to what she cared about, which is not just social justice, but more specifically her passion, which was making sure that we did the right thing for the residents of Holly Courts, and not just Holly Courts, but all of public housing. Our thoughts and prayers today are with her adopted family, Karen's adopted family at the Holly Courts. And as we do this in memoriam today, I think about all of the residents in that community who I know are in pain, like the rest of us who knew her. I know that there will be a number of services and things that will be done by this community to remember Karen. But Karen, I know that even though you will physically not be here, that your memory will live on. And I want to share a few words from Rachel Iborra, who is the executive director of the Bernal Heights Neighborhood Center. And I know that the Neighborhood Center, whether it's Rachel, Joseph Smook, Kimberly Alvarenga, and others who have the honor and pleasure of working with Karen, would agree with what Rachel said about Karen, and this is what Rachel Iborra said. The Bernal Heights neighborhood community suffered a tremendous loss at the passing of our beloved Karen Huggins, longtime president of the Holly Courts Residents Council. Karen was a passionate leader in the Holly Courts and public housing development communities, always advocating for residents' needs and pushing to hold city agencies and decision makers accountable. During her leadership at Holly Courts, Karen worked closely with the Bernal Heights Neighborhood Center to strengthen and ensure that the voices of public housing residents are heard and prioritized, and help widen the reach of Bernal Heights Neighborhood Center's public housing working group. Karen also helped ensure that Holly Courts residents and leaders get access to funding for programs and services. Karen was instrumental in the awarding of family action grants for youth and seniors focused activities at that development. Aside from her tenacity, Karen had impeccable style, a warm smile, brilliance that will be sorely missed by many of us who were privileged enough to work with her. Rest in peace, Karen Huggins. All of us at Bernal Heights Neighborhood Center hope to continue carrying your fighting spirit and honor your legacy as we continue to deepen our work and relationships at Holly Courts Housing Development. And I will end with this. If there's ever a question that one individual can make a difference in people's lives, I think what happened at Holly Courts and specifically what Karen Huggins did is a perfect example that indeed it is possible for one individual to change people's lives. If you look at the state of affairs and the conditions at Holly Courts, and you compare that to what's happening in other public housing developments, it is because of Karen Huggins that things are and have been so much better at Holly Courts. She is the perfect example in what she did for that community, that it is possible for one person to make a difference. Karen was truly a force of nature, and I don't know about unique people. I guess there's probably need in heaven because I know that if there is work to be done where Karen is, that place is a better place because she's there. And she certainly left San Francisco in much better shape than she found it. We love you, Karen. May you rest in peace.
Thank you, Supervisor Campos. Supervisor Cohen.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Thank you. So, colleagues, today I've got a couple things that I want to discuss with you. Today I'm introducing a resolution in support of State Constitutional Amendment 5, authored by Senators Holly Mitchell and Lonnie Hancock. Last year, we unanimously approved a resolution urging the state to close the commercial property tax loophole. And this is also known as Prop 13. And many of you know that the biggest and greatest beneficiaries of Prop 13 are commercial and industrial property owners who pay less property taxes than homeowners. So SCA 5 for the Property Tax Fairness Amendment would finally make our property tax code fair by assessing commercial and industrial properties their fair market value. So please, I would appreciate it if you could join me and get behind this effort to close this loophole that commercial and industrial property owners have been able to sneak through for decades. And I'd like to strengthen Prop 13 for what it really was meant to do, and that is to protect homeowners, renters, as well as seniors. Also want to bring to your attention that passing the constitutional amendment could also mean nearly $9 billion in revenue for schools and public services statewide, and close to $690 million for San Francisco alone. So that's a significant amount of money that we should be rallying to get. I also have another urging resolution to support Senate Bill 411, the Right to Record Bill. Now, the Oakland City Council has already introduced something very similar, a resolution that is expected to pass next week. And this bill was authored by Senator Ricardo Lara, and it states that anyone making an audio or video recording of a police or peace officer and is in a public place that the individual has the right to be in is not breaking the law. Now, you may recall in certain parts of the United States there are laws being passed in different state houses prohibiting people from recording peace officers and police officers. There's a resolution that I'm asking you to join me in supporting, and that's Senate Bill 411. Also want to introduce to you that I am introducing an ordinance that will require the city's two largest law enforcement agencies, the San Francisco Police Department as well as the Sheriff's Department, to expand not only the type of information that is collected and recorded, but also when it is collected. Now, here's some facts for you that I want to help anchor this conversation. First, African American men are arrested for drug crimes 19 times more often than any other race in San Francisco. And African American women in San Francisco face arrest rates 13 times higher than any other race. So overall, African American San Franciscans are arrested 7.3 times more often than other cities in the state of California. And this ordinance that I'm introducing would require the name, age, race, gender, and gender identity to be collected not only during traffic stops, but also anytime either of the departments detain or stops for questioning or searches an individual. And this information collected will do a couple of things. The information that is collected will also include a few other items. First, this is very important, the name and badge number of all officers involved. I think this is critical when it comes to transparency. The result of the contact, for example, was it an arrest? Was it a citation or a warning? Was an incident report made? I think it's also very important to note that what I'm proposing here is not new, that similar data already is being collected by the City of Oakland, the City of Berkeley, as well as New York City. And with this reporting requirement, I hope to quell some of the unintentional and disproportionate numbers of arrests and targeting that we see of minorities and of those members of the transgendered community. It is this disproportionate policing that really has led to the outcries that we've seen in Baltimore, that we've seen in Ferguson. It's very important for us in balancing this discussion, one that we had a very profound discussion yesterday in the Land Use Committee, as we work to find the appropriate number of police officers to keep our citizens safe. Now, I want to take a moment and always commend and recognize the hardworking men and women who serve the police and sheriff's department, and frankly, all of our first responders. But with this ordinance, I hope to introduce additional oversight and transparency and to rebuild the trust that the community once had with our law enforcement departments by making this information available for the public to review and by requiring quarterly reporting to the mayor's office, to this body, the Board of Supervisors, as well as to the Police Commission. So I hope that you will be able to rally and get behind me in some of these efforts, colleagues. The rest I submit, Madam President and Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Supervisor Cohen. Madam President, we're going to hand the proceedings back to you.
Okay, thank you, colleagues. DPW has returned their revised list, and I wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity to take a look at it and make a decision. So, Mr. Kwong, you'd like to make comments?
Yes, thank you. We've met with the constituents and they've brought up a number of issues, ones that were mainly concerned about the quality of work. We have stricken them from the list so that we can take care of those properties. We have two property owners that have financial hardship concerns that we did not strike from the list because they have the work was done and it was done satisfactory. We have brought to their attention our willingness to put them onto what is known as the Sidewalk Nuisance Abatement Program, which is a deferred cost program that spreads out the unpaid invoice over a period of 5 years on the property tax, but it does have a one-time 12% administrative fee that's placed on it. One individual, one property owner has absolutely refused to want to take part in it, but at the same time, the sidewalk repairs were completed and it was done. This particular program is in existence for the safety of the public, and under the Public Works Code, the fronting property owner is responsible for the repair and maintenance of the sidewalk.
Okay. Colleagues, are there any objections to accepting the amendments to the company assessments report as described by the department? Seeing no objections, Madam Clerk, can we call the roll on approval of the report as amended?
Madam President.
Oh, sorry, Supervisor Weiner.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Just a question for you. First of all, I'm sorry. How many properties were taken off of the list?
About 6 of them.
6 of them. And on this list, what portion of these properties is the damage to be repaired tree related? It seemed like a number of the public commenters it was related to trees. Is that a small portion, a significant portion?
There were a number. I couldn't give you a percentage of how many trees were addressed in our particular year, but it is significant. But given the number of properties that were repaired and the number of people that had issues that came up today, I would say that our program is largely successful in safeguarding the public right-of-way, even when trees are causing the damage. As you may know, in the city and county of San Francisco, trees are either maintained by the fronting property owner or maintained by the city as a whole. The sidewalk inspection repair program goes through and repairs sidewalks in the public right-of-way, and when trees are identified as belonging to the responsibility of the fronting property owners, we make that known to the property owner in the notice to repair that we send them.
I'm familiar with the policy, and I'm not a fan of the policy. But I am familiar with it. It's terrible public policy. It's not your public policy. It's adopted by the city. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, colleagues, Well, the House has changed, so, well, no, it hasn't. Now it hasn't. Can we take this as amended, same House, same call?
Roll call.
Okay, roll call vote, please, Madam Clerk.
On item 33, as amended, Supervisor Tang?
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Weiner?
No.
Weiner, no. Supervisor Yee? Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos?
Aye.
Avalos, aye. Supervisor Breed?
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos? Campos, aye. Supervisor Christensen?
Aye.
Christensen, aye. Supervisor Cohen? Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell? Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim? Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr?
Aye.
Marr, aye. There are 10 ayes, 1 no, with Supervisor Weiner in the dissent.
Okay, this resolution as amended passes.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, can you please return to roll call for introductions?
2 remaining members to call. We'll begin with Supervisor Kim.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Today I am introducing a ballot measure to expand the scope of the city's surplus property ordinance, which directs the city to prioritize affordable housing and homeless housing development on public lands that are not essential to any city department. I made a commitment to voters last year that Proposition K was only the beginning of a larger package of legislative tools that we would roll out to address the city's worsening housing crisis. We haven't updated the surplus property ordinance since 2005, and it's time to bring it up to speed with the city's priorities and strengthen it. We have a finite amount of precious land left to develop in San Francisco, and on a daily basis, this board hears from our residents that they want to continue to live in the city and that we should prioritize the production of affordable and middle-income housing over luxury housing. The best opportunity sites that we have are the ones that we have site control over, and that is public land. This initiative would expand the surplus property ordinance's existing development priorities for publicly owned parcels to include permanently affordable housing for residents making up to 120% of AMI, of which 60% of our San Francisco residents currently qualify for. The purpose of this legislation is to require all city departments, including enterprise agencies and school districts, to reveal potential developable sites and increase the Board of Supervisors and public transparency of that. Second, to strengthen the Mayor's Office of Housing and Community Development's right of first negotiations on any properties considered for disposition. Third, to require minimum Prop K affordable housing standards on properties disposed by the city departments, if not for 100% affordable housing. And finally, to encourage non-city agencies to follow the same standards for disposition of their properties in the city. A key aspect of the ballot measure is to provide citizen participation and oversight in the approval process for development on public sites in order to ensure that the directives of the surplus property ordinance are being met in the form of regular reporting. This is, yet again, another tool in our kit and an important and valuable tool in helping the city meet our goal to make our city more affordable for our residents. On the topic of public land, I am also proud to announce my support today for the Mission Rock development project on Seawall Lot 337. As announced by the Giants today, we will be meeting our Proposition K goals. This, as many of you know, is the first major project to come out of the docket after the voters passed Proposition K this past November. And this project will now be committing to building 40% affordable and middle-income housing on site with committed city dollars. In true community partnerships, the Giants have worked in creating a project that will serve the entire city and set a new standard for affordable housing in San Francisco. As a city, we know that we have not built enough middle-income housing. And as a result of working together, we will be building an unprecedented number of housing for middle-class families, ranging from ballpark workers to teachers and nurses. And I'm proud to add my name to the growing list of supporters, and I'm excited to work with the Giants on meeting our Proposition K goal. I want to acknowledge Supervisor Avalos, members of Choo-Choo, our Community of Council Housing Organization, Bishop Bill Sorrell Housing, Local 2, who worked through the weekend and until 3 a.m. last night, really hammering out a lot of the details and the financing and tying up a lot of strings so that we could meet our deadline today of not moving forward with our ballot ordinance. And I also want to thank and support the support of Supervisor Campos, Mar, and Yi as well, in ensuring that we would be able to make this unprecedented announcement on affordable and middle-income housing on public land. I'm really proud of what the city is doing today. I think it has been a big week for affordable housing. I want to acknowledge the recent decision by the California Supreme Court on allowing cities to mandate the production of affordable housing with private developers in cities throughout California, and acknowledge that we are really seeing developers come to the table with really ambitious proposals on building affordable housing here in San Francisco. I think that this is something that is very positive for San Francisco. I think I want to recognize that there have already been 2 proposals, one of which Forest Cities announced at 5M, at which they are already committing to building 33% of its units as affordable to residents, seniors, and working class families that make 50% of average median income and below. Finally, several weeks ago, I announced that my office requested the city attorney to draft tenant protection legislation that would respond to increasing number of evictions that result from breach of contract and nuisance violation. The legislation allows for units where a landlord previously terminated a lease or required a tenant to temporarily relocate because of an owner move-in, Ellis Act eviction, condo conversion, capital repairs, or lead remediation work, wherein the next tenant that moves in can move in at the same rent rate of the departing tenant. I'd like to recognize Robert Bryan, City Attorney, for working so closely with our office to draft quickly the Tenant Protection Ordinance, and I want to acknowledge the support and co-sponsorship of Supervisor Campos, Avalos, and Mar. And Madam Clerk, the rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Kim. Supervisor Mar.
Madam Clerk, I wanted to thank Supervisor Kim for the comments on the Giants Mission Rock development, but also the Just Cause Evictions Protections 2.0. I wanted to say for the Giants Mission Rock, I think it's a great proposal now, and hopefully there's strong citywide support for it. I think moving from 33% affordable low-income and middle-income to 40% is a significant jump. I wanted to thank Larry Bear and Jack Bear for their work, but the coalition from communities led by the Council of Community Housing Organizations, especially Peter Cohen and Fernando Marti, grassroots groups like Bishop, but also Samcan and Poder, and from Labor, Mike Casey and others. I think it's significant improvements and really appreciate so many people from Merit Art Agnos to others to the Teachers Union working on workforce housing as a key part of the project, and really appreciative of other developments really looking at our housing balance passed by voters under the leadership of many of the supervisors here as well. I also wanted to thank Supervisor Kim and the San Francisco Anti-Displacement Coalition and tenant organizations for the Just Cause 2.0 measure. I think it will help with the current displacement and eviction crisis, though we need to do much more. But I'm really appreciative that that is moving forward as well, addressing the fears of displacement and the huge speculation going on, harming many of our neighborhoods. And lastly, I wanted to invite everyone to the second of the Richmond District's movie nights. Fog City Family Films is what we call it. We're showing The Fantastic Mr. Fox, the Wes Anderson's masterpiece, the story by Roald Dahl, who did Willy Wonka, but really an amazing Wes Anderson film. It's at Rossi Playground on Arguello and Anza. It's on July 20th. Bring your blankets. It sometimes is cold in the summertime, but at 15 minutes right before sundown is where the film will start, but there's a lot of activities coordinated by Chrissy Pontecario and Chet and others from the Richmond District YMCA, the Clement Street Merchants Association that have provided tremendous support in addition to our office. There are a lot of people that are signed up. 500 people will be watching it with us, but really you have to go online to confirm if you're going to be there as well. The first 60 households get free blankets, but I encourage people to bring warm clothing and blankets. It's a wonderful way to build community as the Clement Street merchants have talked about. And I wanted to say, hopefully it's a really warm day, Saturday, July 20th, but be prepared and bundle up. The rest I'll submit. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Marr. Madam President, that concludes the introduction of new business.
Okay, Madam Clerk, can you please read public comment?
At this time, the public may comment generally for up to 2 minutes on items within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board to include the minutes and items on the adoption without reference to committee calendar, items 42 through 47. Public comment is not allowed on items already subject to public comment at a board committee. Pursuant to the board's rules, direct your remarks to the board as a whole, not to individual supervisors, and nor to the audience. Speakers using translation assistance will be allowed twice the amount of time to testify. And if you would like to display your document on the overhead projector, please clearly state such to SFG TV and remove the document when the screen should return to live coverage of the meeting.
Thank you. First speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. I'm Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association. My topic today is the destruction and shrinking of core library functions at San Francisco Public Library, even as the library's budget goes ever upward, and sadly assisted by the lack of hearings or questions asked by you and your body. The library's new teen center is scheduled to open this Thursday, June 18th. It's called The Mix, and when it does open, I want to be sure that you and your constituents and the public know it has come at a cost. That cost is not just millions of dollars, it is also the loss of half the space for bound magazines within the library. And that represents a serious reduction in accessibility. Tens of thousands of magazines that were available to everyone on the shelf on the 5th floor are now unavailable to browsing. The public is only able to see these magazines upon specific written requests for specific issues and dates, and in most cases with a 24-hour wait. We are not opposed, let's be clear to that, we're not opposed to the teen center as such, but we think there were and are alternatives for its placement. For example, in the library's multiply failed cafe space or in any city storefront or office building. The destruction and diminishment I'm speaking about were only possible because of the lack of public concern from this Board of Supervisors. Supervisor London Breed, Supervisor John Avalos, Supervisor David Campos, Supervisor Julie Christensen, Supervisor Malia Cohen, Supervisor Mark Farrell, Supervisor Jane Kim, Supervisor Eric Marr, Supervisor Katie Tang, Supervisor Scott Wiener, Supervisor Norman Yee. We ask you to ask questions about the budget and hold hearings. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Honorable President Breed, honorable members of the Board of Supervisors, my name is Reuben David Goodman, and I'm a mental health consumer. I want to thank you in advance for your kind attention. I ask that the San Francisco Board of Supervisors take an interest in the conditions at board and care facilities and the treatment of residents in the city and county of San Francisco. These residents are among our city's most vulnerable citizens, and many are unable to articulate their needs. A letter of concern to the state regulatory agency would be a start, but I feel very strongly that the city needs to involve itself in making sure that these citizens who are so vulnerable are receiving adequate care. I need to report discriminatory practices and preferential treatment at my board and care. Preferential treatment is given to a Caucasian resident. He is allowed to use a refrigerator to store milk. I have placed items in the refrigerator, and those have been thrown away by the caregiver without informing me that they would be thrown away. I put some Curtin's nectar in there, it was thrown away. I put 2 unopened cheeses from Safeway in there, they were thrown away. And most upsetting was I had received from the kosher lunch program at the Jewish Community Center a jar of gefilte fish during Passover and some horseradish. I clearly marked it as mine, it was thrown away. If anyone is concerned about conditions at board and care facilities, I'm at ReubenDGoodman@yahoo.com. Reuben is spelled REUBEN, dgoodman@yahoo.com. Go Warriors, and this is a Woodrow Wilson High School Warrior wishing our team well. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, President Breed and Supervisors. I have graphics. It's a little basketball autograph by Rick Barry, the former Warrior that won 40 years ago. Just a little basketball. And I just want to show it. And I want to say my dad died, Phil Paulson. He worked at Central Shops way back when in the 50s, and 60s, and 70s, and I miss him very much. That happened a couple days ago, my dad, Phil Paulson. And it was nice meeting Jackie Spear at West Portal last weekend. Jackie Spear, Congresswoman, she's running again. And got a good reason for taking the easy waterway out now. Got a good reason for taking the easy waterway out. You were a day water tripper, Sunday lawnmower, yeah. It took you so long to find out, but you got a ticket and you found out. You're a big teaser. You took a half the ocean there. You're a big teaser. You took half of the ocean on your lawn there. You were a day water tripper, Sunday mower, yeah. It took you so long to find out. You found out you got a ticket. And happy birthday, City Hall. It's 100 years. Through the years, you never let us down. You turned our lives around. The sweetest items, district days we found with you through the years. I can't remember when you weren't there, when City Hall didn't care, and we cared for you. I swear we've been through everything there is.
Thank you, Walter, and our condolences for your father.
Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Thank you, President Breed and other victims of the cabal. My name is Christopher Dahl, and I live at 6th and Howard, 10 blocks and less than 14 meters from sea level. I rise to reassess a previous comment. People said I was a little harsh. It was argued that you personally could not be held to be responsible, to be morally liable for the death of that poor 12-year-old boy that got run over by the Metro car. After all, the sequence of events that led to that tragedy were not a consequence of your actions. You weren't around when the system was designed or the trains ordered. Not your fault. Out of your hands, off your conscience. I would have found it hard to resist that argument, except for the fact that automatic collision avoidance systems have been available for years and deployable in months if you try really, really hard. And for some of you, your services have been available for those years. Maybe you were simply uninformed. Maybe you were unable to try really, really hard. Well, I'm informing you now. There are better ways to do things. I'm informing you now. There are faster ways to do things, and I'm informing you now that I would have to testify years from now, when your negligence now has enabled another such tragedy then, have to testify when someone's weeping survivor tries to sue you into dirt. I would have to testify to the fact that you were present and you were informed. Thank you, President Breed.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Happy LGBT Pride to everybody in San Francisco. Supervisor earlier said that he had 3 protests at his condo on 17th and Market Street. Yes, there was a wiener roast, a weenie roast, I should say.
Sir, can you direct your comments to the board as a whole, please, and not to individual supervisors?
I am directing my comments to the board as a whole. And so, you know, if Reverend Phelps moved into the Castro, would the Castro residents and the gay people of San Francisco have to put up with that? Well, in some people's eyes, the district representative from that, the representative from that district is Reverend Phelps. We have lost 25% of our lesbian population as we celebrate gay pride because of the ethnic cleansing done in San Francisco of Latinos, of African Americans, of elderly Chinese Americans in Chinatown. And so, this board also, or this supervisor of the Castro also voted to stop homeless people who were LGBT, which represent a third of the homeless population in San Francisco, to not sleep on a comfortable grass in the park, but to be forced to sleep on hard concrete. The inhumanity of that is beyond comprehension. And what would Harvey Milk say? Would he be also embarrassed that a person who is gay like myself represents such anti-gay, such homophobic, such despicable ways of looking at human beings? And yes, this ethnic cleansing that continues to go on in San Francisco is horrendous, and very little is being done about it. But I notice this word ethnic cleansing is being used more and more in this chambers, on the radio, in the media, and there's a reason for that, because it applies to what's happening. The forced relocation of 8,000 Latinos in the Mission, not willingly, but forced. People up to 98 years old.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
America is the most fascist and anti-Semitic country. 70 years ago, United States returned 500 women and children, Jewish children, by Joseph Kennedy, who told these Jewish people who came on the ship, St. Louis, they bought a ship and wanted to emigrate to United States, avoid the Hitler concentration camps and Auschwitz gas chamber. But Joseph Kennedy told them, until I will live, no one Jewish person will come to United States. And they returned this ship, whose name was St. Louis, and all 500 women and children went to Auschwitz concentration camp in gas chamber. They disappear. It's another side of this story. The rabbi who came to Joseph Kennedy, who was very good best friend of Hitler, and they asked Kennedy to allow Jewish people come to United States, avoid the gas chamber, and he said no. Then they told him that he will be punished by God, and all his men, his sons and grandson will be killed by God. And this is what's happened. The same now is going with your Board of Supervisors. You are doing unbelievable by eviction.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Hello, Michael Petrellis. The following city agencies, starting with the Fire Commission, the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force, the San Francisco Housing Authority, and the Human Rights Commission, are four agencies that would like to have their meetings aired on TV. Unfortunately, this City Hall is not wired for airing all of the meetings. I was just upstairs at the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force in room 408, which is also where the Housing Authority meets. That room is not wired so that SF.gov TV can air the meetings that takes place there, that they cannot air them on TV, so there is less sunshine of these four very important commissions. I'm very disappointed that, as far as I know, there is no effort to increase money for sunshine in the budget this year to wire every meeting room in this building so that the Fire Commission, Human Rights Commission, and Sunshine Ordinance Task Force, that their meetings could air on TV. Now, it's year 2015. I was under the impression that we had already allocated funds to make every hearing room wired. Why is it I'm here today saying, hey, we need some real transparency and accountability of those commissions, but unfortunately, this board has not allocated the funds to install cameras and also get enough staff at SFGov TV so that those meetings could be aired on television. In July, the Fire Commission will be moving from their headquarters here at City Hall, and unfortunately, there's no room that they can get to air those meetings. It is time for full sunshine here at City Hall.
Thank you. Your time is up. Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name is Emil Margolis. I'm a resident of District 1. I'm an organizer for Evolve, working to reform the commercial side of Proposition 13. And I'm here today to thank you for your leadership on this critical issue. Just about a year ago, you passed a resolution calling for this reform. As a result of your efforts, 109 other school boards and city councils have followed suit. There's now over 700 elected officials in California calling for large commercial property owners to pay their fair share of property taxes. So thank you again, and please do support SCA 5, which is the first piece of legislation ever introduced in 37 years to close fully the commercial property tax loophole here in California. So special thanks to Supervisor Cohen for sponsoring the legislation.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Of struggle and strive for daily self-improvement, of holiness, and applied pathway of specialized usage of good virtue. Once the mental progress for life force, that of speech of trustworthy words or meaning, of course, will make that mutual way of awakening benefit and true gains. That is the art of and talent of true man. By talking to people all sorts of life, one could actualize oneself of happily and an individual's destiny in connection to the spiritual soul of self. In addition to worldly talent and methodological skill and true and good social way, as much as heaven man unity of time trend or wide influence, or of worldly relationship can be well in success by such performing human daily works of good capacity. One is also to be wise with smartness, derived right from principle and wisdom of origin of self-nature, apply expression of true and good capacity according to the selected purpose for leading on as such industrialization. Of concern to past, present, and future personal life of destiny, of success and missed area, one should actually go way in superior and beyond with workforce in order to uplift oneself on the heavenly way of true life on earth as true ground. Moving apart from darkness of dangers onto bright self of brilliant or forever security for self, family, and worldly people, we can definitely enjoy happy days of our livelihood. In making success of giant holy benefit and gains of credit in wealth by seeing true chances of the making can naturally go along the lucky line of all events. With diversified changes and still of being firm of self, one's objective goal and value, reasoning thought for action pathway will be surely exactly without mistakes. With middle focus and harmonious peace of wellness, we can achieve safe cause to safe soul of full awakening in good sight.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
I'll be using the overhead, please. Okay. Good afternoon, Madam President, supervisors, community members, staff. I'm Colleen Fernald from Sebastopol in Sonoma County. And do you recognize this? The U.S. Constitution. Do you remember swearing an oath to uphold and defend it? I did. I ran for office challenging Feinstein in 2 of the primaries, not because I wanted to be a politician, but I wanted to authentically defend and uphold this Constitution. Did you know that at the end of the Bush administration, the U.S. Conference of Mayors actually put a plank in their resolution saying, you know, Congress isn't listening. We've got potholes and all kinds of other problems, unfunded liabilities with your pensions. But this, war in Afghanistan and Iraq is taking a lot of our budget. And by the way, it's with debt that we have to service as well as money that we don't have. So the U.S. Conference of Mayors said, we'd like to have our troops out of Iraq and Afghanistan. And woohoo, we sort of did. Except that we didn't change the unconstitutional use of force that happened in October of 2002. Public Law 107243. That's what this U.S. Conference of Mayors needs to talk about. So I wanted to encourage you to do this. You are a member. Talk to your mayor about that. Public Law 107243 says that the armed forces of the U.S. President can be used as he determines to be necessary. So if you want a female president, you're going to have to change the law anyway. So we might as well make it constitutional, right? Stick to defense. We can afford that. It will also make less of a toll on our service members who do serve when it's not wars of offense, of choice. So I contacted Supervisor Breed's office to also discuss the International Day of Peace, September 21st. You're supposed to have a one-day ceasefire on the books through the United Nations since 2001, but we've not been upholding it. So oneday.org.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. My name is Barry Hermanson. I'm a member of Physicians for a National Health Care Plan and also single payer now. I'm not a physician, and we were going to have a couple of physicians come and actually make comments today, but you folks are moving along rather quickly in your agenda today, and so I called them to say they would not be here in time. I'm here to speak in favor of the resolution that is in front of you shortly, item number 45. It's a resolution supporting the National Day of Action for Medicare's 50th birthday, and that will take place on July 30th over in Oakland at Frank-Ogawa Plaza. Beginning at 11, there'll be a rally and speeches at noon. This is a very, very important resolution. I am glad for many of the improvements in health care that Obamacare does offer us, and particularly in terms of the dramatic expansion of Medicaid and Medi-Cal to serving those who are the poorest among us. Even with full implementation of Obamacare, there will be tens of millions of people who will be without health care in this country. And we continue to pay about double or more than double of what every other industrialized country pays per capita for health care, and we get poorer health care outcomes. And so I'm here just to say, please pass this. I want to thank Supervisor Wiener for introducing this, and for Supervisors Farrell and Compost for stepping forward to co-sponsor, and I hope the rest of you will as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello, I'm Sammy Johnson, and I love everybody, and I attend on reconstructing Mission Street, working with the police department, working with the health department, and also, reviewing microscopic and putting scientific studies to where they can understand and cure cancer. For a lot of people don't realize what's all involved in it because a lot of pain is involved. But after a while, it's all gone, and you feel like that there's another place in this world that they've been denied and not realizing the significant parts of all this, and that the whole microscopic destruction of Mission Street and of Hunters Point and the district area and all around the world that I can put this mark on. And that we can have a better, beautiful place in this kind of manner. I don't think anybody's been thinking of this, a building, because I'm pretty worried about the way they got the construction already. And I don't think it's going to stand in the years to come. Which I'm intending on building something that's going to stand for a long time, and to make sure that the police department is more, premier with the health department and with the governor duties in city and state to be aware. Right now, I'm just trying to get my phone to where I can talk, so you know a little more about the resolution and how they've been misunderstood and how that things that 9/11 had, put on.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. My name is Oscar James. I'm a native resident of Bayview Hunters Point. I came for two reasons. One, hoping that this Board of Supervisors will close the Supervisors meeting in honor of Commissioner Leroy King on his
Already
passing.
done, Mr. James.
Okay, thank you very much. The other thing I'm bringing to you, we have letters that's coming from the community asking for 3 people to be selected to be on the OCII, Cedric Jackson, Bridget LeBlanc, Derek Tolliver. Their resumes and what have you will be coming before you. I ask for this Board of Supervisors when it comes that you guys would support that. They have long histories with the Bayview Hunters Point and Western Addition, and also I would like for the mayor to support them also, and keep up the good work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. James.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Ace on the case. I know I only got 2 minutes, so I'm going to edit everything I got into this thing here, copyrighted through the community. Listen here, first of all, I want to commend Supervisor Campos. I'm going to be doing a review of all supervisors, but I got to commend him this week. He's supervisor, pardon me, Queen Bee. Campos has been doing a hell of a job down here. But I'm going to talk about what's happening here this week. We got the mayors coming here. First of all, let me do this. My name is Ace, ooh, and I've been on this case. Now, some of those people out there didn't want me all in this place, but it's no mystery. Just check Black history. Ooh, I've been working on some cases involved in a lot of conspiracy, and some people don't like me. But what's going down in this town? The black population is going down. Let me go on to another segment. Now Eddie, ooh, he knows me. Ooh, we worked together when he was with the HRC. But today, if you ask Mayor Eddie about ACE, you know what he might say? He'll say Ace is working on some damn conspiracy. But I want to know what's going down, Ed, down in your town. The black population is going down. And they're going to have the mayor's convention here. In my community, there's a small entities have the nerve call the police on me. They want to lock me up, try to shut me up. And down here at City Hall, sheriff took me downstairs and wanted to try to kick my butt. But I had to call Ross and he said, what's going down in this town? The black population is going down. Sisters on the board, we got to get together and make it happen. My name is Ace.
Thank you, Mr. Washington. Next speaker, please.
Thank you for having me. My name is Adriana Lopez Vermut. I'm here to talk about Proposition 43, supporting and urging the immediate release of Venezuelan opposition leader Leopoldo Lopez. I am a citizen of the United States. I live in San Francisco. My children go to school here, but I am of Venezuelan origin. My family lives in Venezuela. Leopoldo, my brother, has been in prison since February of last year, 15 months. For sedition. He has called for peaceful protests denouncing the government of Nicolás Maduro for corruption, persecution, repression, and censorship. He has been invoking peaceful protest and has led peaceful protesters, mostly students. He's being tried right now for using subliminal message in his speech, inciting violence. Leopoldo has been in a hunger strike since May 24th. He's been 24 days in a hunger strike that over 100 people have joined, demanding for the liberation of all political prisoners, the end of censorship, repression, and persecution, and the establishment of a parliamentary election state for this year. The resolution before you is important because it represents support by the international community to respect universal human rights that are now being violated in Venezuela. The liberation of Leopoldo has been supported and asked for publicly by President Obama. It has received bipartisan support in the U.S. Congress. The High Commissioner of the United Nations has called for his liberation. The Arbitrary Detentions Committee of the United Nations has also asked for his liberation. The Canadian Parliament and over 50 ex-presidents of the Western Hemisphere. As sister of Leopoldo, I have the responsibility to push forth his plight and ask that you please support this proposition. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello, my name is Renea Kutani. I am also born in Venezuela. I came here 33 years ago. I live here. I come here because the only way for me to do any support for the injustices that are being done in Venezuela is make the world known as much as possible. The only thing that I can do from here is sign petitions, as they have been like at the different organizations to support his liberation. There's over 93 people right now joining him in a hunger strike, and they are asking for liberation of political prisoners, many of them who has been unjustly arrested, and to support freedom of speech. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Tom Gilberti. I understand the president's coming this week to raise some money for the wealthy people down in the peninsula, the same people that are blocking the third track from Caltran, creating a little bottleneck for our transit. The Bay Area deserves the best transit in the country. He's raising money. Will he share it with the Pelosi and Democrats that have opposed his TPP? A signpost of our modern times. Corporate lobbyists writing rules to protect corporate profits. Completely secret from the people that we send to Washington. So why do we even bother sending to Washington? Global economy equals corporate economy, and the corporate economy owns the government in that case. In the week in the news, a rarity, an eviction. 20-year-old woman in the city got evicted. $1.4 million Google executive paid for a piece of property. If renters get appreciated at the point of sale, IRA had recommended for every 5 years living in a house, you get 3% of the price. That woman would have got $168,000. That would have given her some time to move and some places to move. The owner would have gotten $1.23 million, dollars. It's time for this social change to happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other members of the public who'd like to provide public comment at this time? Seeing none, public comment is closed. Madam Clerk, can you please read the committee items for adoption without committee reference?
Yes, items 42 through 47 are being considered for immediate adoption without committee reference. A single roll call vote may enact these items. If a member objects, an item may be removed and considered separately.
Supervisor Wiener.
Items 45 and 47.
45 and 47. Supervisor Farrell.
43 and 44.
Okay. Supervisor Avalos. Is that all the items?
That's all the items, Madam President.
Just call the items, starting with 42.
There is a matter of item 46, which has not been called by anyone.
Poor item number 46.
Item 42 is a resolution to support California State Senate Bill 128, the End of Life Option Act, authored by Senators Lois Wolk and Bill Monning, which would expand the end of life options in California.
Supervisor Avalos.
Thank you, Madam President. First off, I'd like to thank my colleagues, Supervisors Marr, Wiener, and Campos, for supporting this resolution, which is in support of Senate Bill 128. I also want to thank Nancy Jacobson and Connie Rubiano, who are here as well and been working tirelessly to see that this bill, the Senate bill, passes. This Senate bill also was a result of years and years of effort to see that we could actually provide people who are terminally ill with a peaceful passage into the next life. Often people who have the ability to do it, as we've seen in Oregon, California, where there is legislation that enables people to have an end-of-life option, they are given the ability to do that, receive medication to bring about their peaceful death, and actually choose not to take it. And so we know that providing this palliative release does provide people with a real sense of comfort, knowing that they can actually relieve their suffering if they choose to do so. It also enables a lot of families to be able to come together and celebrate the lives that people have lived. So colleagues would like to have your support on this measure, and I thank my colleagues again for their co-sponsorship.
Okay, Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
On item 42, Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Wiener.
Aye.
Wiener, aye. Supervisor Yee. Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos.
Aye.
Avalos, aye. Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos.
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Christensen.
Aye.
Christensen, aye. Supervisor Cohen.
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell.
Aye.
Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim. Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr.
Aye.
Marr, aye. There are 11 ayes.
This resolution is adopted unanimously. Madam Clerk, can you call item 43, please?
Item 43 is a resolution to support and urge the immediate release of the Venezuelan opposition leader, Leopoldo Lopez, who was illegally imprisoned in an attempt to silence dissent and free speech in February of 2014.
Supervisor Farrell.
Send this item to committee.
Okay.
What did you say?
He wants to send the item to committee. The item will go to committee. All right, Madam Clerk, can you call item number 44?
44 is a resolution to declare July 2nd, 2015 as Mike Fogarty Day in the city and county of San Francisco.
Supervisor Farrell.
Thanks, President Breed. Colleagues, wanted to declare July 2nd, 2015 Mike Fogarty Day here in the city and county of San Francisco. Mike is one of these rare, amazing breeds still left in our city. He's been a neighborhood bartender for over 40 years in District 2. He first, I know from my family, was serving my father drinks at Perry's on Union Street in the early 70s before I was born, and he continues today at the Balboa Cafe. I went to high school with his son. He's one of these simply legends in a neighborhood that is, again, I think a rare breed. He is turning 70. There's going to be a big neighborhood celebration, and so I want to do this to honor him, a true legend in our neighborhoods in District 2, and certainly for my family, and so I want to commend him on his 70th birthday, so I hope I can have everyone's support on this one.
Colleagues, can we take this item? Same house, same call? Without objection, this resolution is adopted unanimously. Madam Clerk, can you call the next item?
Item 45 is a resolution to support the National Day of Action for Medicare's 50th birthday on July 30th, 2015.
Supervisor Wiener.
Thank you, Madam President. This resolution will reaffirm our strong support for Medicare on the eve of the 50th anniversary of the program. Medicare is a program that has lifted so many people out of poverty and ensured millions and millions and millions of people access to health care. It's also a great example of a government program that works very well in terms of having very low administrative costs, 2%, which is less than the 14% we see in the private sector. We also know there are continual efforts to undermine Medicare, whether by privatizing it or raising the eligibility age or other efforts to really undermine what's been one of the most successful and important government programs in American history. And so this will put us on record in support of Medicare and the Medicare Turns 50 rally, which will be held in Oakland on July 30th.
Thank you. Colleagues, can we take this item, same house, same call? Without objection, this resolution is adopted unanimously. Madam Clerk, can you call item number 46?
Item 46 is a motion to schedule the Board of Supervisors to convene a committee of the whole on June 23rd at 3 p.m. to hold a public hearing on a resolution approving a report of assessment costs, public works for inspection, and or repair of blighted properties through the Accelerated Sidewalk Abatement Program.
Which we already did. Can we take this item, same house, same call? Without objection, this motion is approved unanimously. Madam Clerk, can you call item 47, please?
Item 47 is a motion to approve a final map 8005, a 5-residential unit condominium project located at 135 Buena Vista Avenue West.
Supervisor Wiener.
Madam President, I move to continue item 47 1 week.
Okay, Supervisor Wiener has made a motion to continue item number 47 to the meeting of June 23rd, 2015, seconded by Supervisor Christensen. Colleagues, can we take this without objection? Without objection, this item is continued to next week's meeting. Madam Clerk, can you please read, is there any other...
In memoriams, Madam President.
Yes, can you please read the in memoriams?
Today's meeting will be adjourned in memory of the following beloved individuals. On behalf of Supervisor Wiener, for the late Mrs. Vicki Rosen, at the request of President Breed and Supervisor Cohen, on behalf of former Commissioner Leroy King and Mr. James Jerome Perry, and on behalf of Supervisor Campos, for the late Mrs. Karen Huggins.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Is there any other business before us today?
That concludes our business for today, Madam President.
Thank you, everybody. We are adjourned.